week long, starting with a couple of really good guests today. We'll get to that in a moment. But for the 102nd time, Utah and BYU play football on Saturday night inside Rice-Eccles Stadium. Of course, 8:15 Mountain Time is your kick. We'll have you covered with pregame, Porter Larson, and a cast of characters live from the ESPN 700 tailgate lot at Guardsman's Way. Come on up and see us prior to the game. Porter's going to get rolling at 4:15, 4 hours of pregame coverage for Utah BYU coming up on Saturday night. And there's a lot at stake. Both BYU at this point, 4-point favorite. The official spread opened at 5. It's moved down 1 point towards the University of Utah. Your over-under is 41.5. Money line, for those of you that are into such things, minus 190 on BYU. So what the line is telling us is there's not a lot of confidence either way. In a rivalry game, typically if you see a 5-point spread for the team that's on the road, you jump on that. But fact of the matter is, Utah football has not shown enough to have a lot of confidence, and you can feel it around the community. So we'll get into it today, and we'll attack it from every different angle. Of course, as we show local in products, when the Utah Jazz win a basketball game. They're on the road for 3 more games. It's Chicago, Milwaukee, San Antonio. They come home for Phoenix and Dallas. They're on the road against the Kings and the Clips, the Lakers, the Spurs, home against the I'm not kidding. This could be like an 0-25 team, and I'm here for it. I'm sorry. I know that bums a lot of people out, but the best time to do this was 2 years ago. The second best time is now. So a little Jazz basketball on the show today. RSL saw its season come to a horribly disappointing end in Minnesota. Both games went to PKs. RSL lost both. So a season that we saw a single season record for both goals scored and points accumulated comes to an end. And now we find out what's next. Pablo has 2 years left on his deal. I'm sure my man's going to be back. I don't know what you do as far as some of the personnel decisions that did not pay off at all. It was odd to watch the new acquisition step up to the penalty spot and all miss their kicks on the road. So a interesting offseason ahead for RSL. Third straight year out in PKs, third straight year out in the first round of the postseason. So RSL season comes to a close. The Utah Hockey Club had an up and down week. They're going to be in action against Winnipeg tomorrow. Winnipeg is the best team in the Central Division. They've only lost once. Utah Hockey Club has lost 5 of their last 6, most recently on the road at Vegas 4-3. So Winnipeg tomorrow. A chaotic, crazy weekend in college football, both in the Big 12 and nationally. When we last spoke, there were 8 unbeaten teams in college football. Now there's only 5, and, of course, Brigham Young is one of them. We told you Texas Tech, Iowa State. Keep an eye out for that one, and Iowa State got at home. Is Houston good? I don't know. Is anybody good or bad in the Big 12? I don't know, but Houston beat K-State at home. Arizona State went to Stillwater and just beat up on the worst team in the conference, which is wild. Mike Gundy, prior to this year, he never loses at home. Now he can't win. Not even one conference game. UCF stomped Arizona. And Baylor got a nice win for Dave Aranda at home over TCU. But upsets both in the Big 12 and nationally as well. A couple of more unbeatens went down. Oregon is the best team in the country, deservedly so. Ohio State got a nice win in Happy Valley over Penn State. Cam Ward, man, Miami continues to roll. But when you look at some of the upsets, Clemson lost at home to Louisville, knocking them down a peg or two. Indiana remains clean. They just smoke bad teams, but they're undefeated. SMU with a good win over Pitt, which looks good for Brigham Young. But a big upset is Texas A&M lost on the road to South Carolina. So if you're a Utah fan, the one thing that gives you a little bit of hope for Saturday is chaos every weekend in both the Big 12 and in college football. Because, as I said, the data at this point indicates that BYU is the better team. I don't know who could argue that right now, right? So we'll get to it. Your Week 9 in pro football wraps up tonight with a little Monday Night Football. You can hear it on our radio station when we say goodnight. Kansas City welcomes in Tampa Bay. The Chiefs are getting 9 points. The over-under is 45.5. All right, happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. It's kind of a nervous week, right? You can feel the underlying energy and the anxiety. We've got rivalry week. We've got an election upon us, and the cold weather is here as we've turned our calendars to November. Right off the top, we're going to bring in Smitty today. Richard Smith will stop by, as we do every Monday throughout the college football season. In case you did not hear the head ball coach at the U, Coach Witt, will bring that back, his media availability, the latest on the quarterback situation, some thoughts on BYU. So we'll bring in Coach Witt in case you missed it. And then we'll bring on Kalani Sitake live on the program. We're going to interview BYU's head coach and good friend of mine, former defensive coordinator at the University of Utah. That's my guy, So when it comes to some of this rivalry stuff, I know the competition can kind of overwhelm you a little bit. But when it comes to the actual personalities, you should know that, at least from my vantage point, most of the people that I've been able to get to know on both BYU and Utah side are good people. So as Kalani says, wishing bad things on good people is bad for the soul. I don't know if Kalani said. He said something like that. I'm paraphrasing. So Kalani's going to stop by the show today. Then Josh Furlong, who covers the Utes for KSL, will roll by as well. So a little bit of everything on the show with a heavy lean towards BYU and Utah coming up on Saturday here in Salt Lake City. It's supposed to be cold but clear. As of now, about 45 degrees at kickoff, but clear skies. But it is Utah. We could get a seismic snowstorm blowing in 30 minutes before kick. You never know. So, oh, by the way, college basketball. It's like here. Utah women played today. The Utah men play tonight. Watch Duke. You don't have a choice. If you watch college basketball, Duke's on ESPN every night. But watch Cooper Flagg. This is the deal, guys. What the Jazz are doing is hard, but the payoff could be great if Lady Luck finally shines upon them. So Richard Smith, Kyle Whittingham, Kalani Sitake, Josh Furlong, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and Porter Larson, the producer of this show, on a Monday. You can kind of feel the axis here in Salt Lake. You can feel the underlying energy and anxiety. I love this week. I always have, but a lot of people don't like the anxious feel,
Yeah, and I'm with you. You can feel it a little bit. You can definitely feel it up at the Spence and Cleone Eccles football facility, which I was at this morning, and that's part of the plan, right? That's part of the process is games like this, whether it's big stakes or usually just rivalries, right? It's either a big game, a bowl game, a conference title game, or a rivalry game in college football. They bring a different level of urgency, a different level of pressure, a different feel, and you definitely get that this week. And as you mentioned, other things going on as well. So yeah, it's a little tense, but sports radio isn't. We can have fun out here.
Wait a second. Are you telling me that building is named after Spence Eccles?
Yes. Not Checketts. Sorry.
Oh, after all these years.
I know.
I just felt like they liked the show, wanted to give me a little pub, and they smacked it on the... It makes sense. He probably donates more money than I do.
A little bit.
All right. Let's get to it. Excited for this on a Monday. Richard Smith will be our first guest. But before we get to Smitty, courtesy of our friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, go to standardrestaurant.com or stop by their convenient location here in Salt Lake City. On a Monday, it's time now for your opening tip. For the 102nd overall time, Utah and BYU will play football coming up on Saturday night. First time in 3 years. Last time, of course, BYU broke a 9-game losing streak. And for the first time since 2018, BYU will be here at Rice-Eccles. BYU has not beat Utah in Salt Lake since 2006. But as I said, the last time these two played, as we know, BYU got the better of it. And there couldn't be more at stake in different ways, in my estimation. So let's dig into it. Okay, so first of all, the line opened up with BYU -5. So Vegas essentially is saying you generally allow the home team a 3-point built-in advantage just for being at home. So what Vegas is saying is they think BYU is a little bit more than a touchdown better than Utah football on a neutral field this year. And obviously the home stadium advantage comes into play. The spread moved pretty quickly to 4, and I actually was anticipating, because of the nature of this game and BYU being on the road, that a lot of people would jump on that 5 and move it to maybe 2.5 or 3, but it has stayed steady at 4 for about 36 hours, okay? So what that means is there's not a lot of confidence from people who study this stuff to try to make money and don't give a rip about blue or red in Utah. Okay, that's what the line is telling us. Most people that are betting on this game don't believe that Utah is the right side. Now, no, not a lot of people are betting on BYU. Obviously, hasn't moved in their direction, but it's essentially a static line, and I wouldn't touch it just because of the nature of this game. Now, the data that we have at hand just indicates BYU's not just better, but they're much better. Okay, that's what we have seen on tape so far. That's what the numbers tell us. Okay, so if you're just talking about two football teams, and if you're just breaking down what we've seen, BYU needs to and should, for anybody who's analyzing it, get the tip of the cap for what they've done so far. 8-0, 5-0 in conference, and after a chaotic weekend behind us, Brigham Young is the only undefeated team in the Big 12. Okay, so we're going to get into a couple elements here about what the weekend behind us means now for BYU, because the fact of the matter is BYU could still get got and most likely make the conference championship game. And honestly, when you look at the way the schedules are kind of unfolding, there's a really good chance that the two teams playing for the Big 12 championship will be Brigham Young and Colorado. We'll get to more on that in a moment. But what a matchup that would be, okay? So again, if you're just analyzing the two teams without the dynamic of what this game means to people, BYU certainly has the edge. And what Kalani has done, and of course, this is not a surprise because as Kalani himself talks about, he really learned how to do this under Coach Witt, and he learned how to coach defensive football under Coach Witt. And Kalani has taken Kyle's playbook, and he has out-Kyled Kyle. I mean, that's what's happening. BYU is out-Utahing Utah right now, and you give them a ton of credit for what they've been able to do, okay? So they could ultimately get got by Utah on Saturday and still march on to play in and potentially win a Big 12 championship. Now, the other thing the chaos in the Big 12 has done has really dampened the reputation of this conference around college football. If you're listening to any of these analysts now, this is a one bid league, period, end of story. So even if Utah enters the Big 12, or excuse me, even if BYU enters the Big 12 championship with one loss, it sounds like they're going to have to win that game because there's not a partner that could essentially allow this conference to get two teams in. We thought it could be Iowa State, but they got God. They lost. And that leaves BYU as the only undefeated Big 12 team. So ultimately, while this would be a dent for BYU if they lose to Utah, it is not a kill shot at all. So there's this whole thing like Utah play spoiler. Utah could spoil an undefeated season, but Utah at this point could not spoil BYU's chances to go play for a Big 12 championship. So that's kind of off the table. And as I said earlier, there's a lot at stake for both these teams in much different ways. For BYU, of course, it is, as they used to call it, the quest for perfection continues. Because how nice would a 12-0 season be? And how nice would, a chance to go down to Dallas and play in the Big 12 championship for BYU in their second year in the Big 12. How nice would that be for them? And then potentially a first-round bye in the CFP. And if we get really, really crazy, potentially hosting a home playoff game at LaVell Edwards Stadium. All things that we were saying about Utah, about 4.5, 5 months ago. That's all on the table for BYU, okay? For Utah, what's at stake is it's much different, okay? Now, look, the only thing worse for a college football program with the expectations that Utah has as a result of what Kyle has built, the only thing worse for the Utes than playing in a throwaway bowl game is not being eligible for one. And guys, if they lose on Saturday, I'm not sure they get to 6. We had 2 guests last week predict Utah's not going bowling. But the way the schedule is played out, everything, it's still Seinfeld upside down bizarro world. The way the schedule is played out, they really have 4 difficult games left to get to, okay? And I have a hard time believing, based off of what we've seen, that Utah can go to Boulder and get a Colorado team, and you got to give Deion credit, man. They are much better and improved year over year than they were a year ago for sure. Iowa State just lost, but at this point, again, if you just go off the numbers and the data, I think Iowa State's going to come in here as a favorite as of now. Things could change over the course of a couple of weeks. Then you're on a short week after Thanksgiving against a UCF team that's just another one of these Big 12 teams that could probably get you if you're not right on that day. Ultimately, that's what this conference has manifested as. But outside of the, keep bowl eligibility alive, outside of the, get your rival, based off of BYU's undefeated season, give them their first loss. This might also be the last chance for these players who will not be here next year, whether it's guys graduating, guys transferring, to endear themselves to a community that honestly right now is pretty down on the squad, okay? So, like, if, for a Ute fan, and as we've talked about, if you pull up either BYU or Utah's roster, you can do it right now if you're online at work. You see Florida, California, Virginia. You see players from all over the country, meaning if you are an 18-year-old from Texas, BYU, Utah probably didn't reverberate with you at all throughout the course of your life. So maybe a lot of these players don't fully understand what this thing is all about, but Kyle does, Morgan does, all those guys up there do. A lot of them played in it. Ironically, some of them on the other side, like Coach Witt. So what the coaches are tasked with now is basically instilling in these young men over the next, 5-6 days, this might be your last chance to be great in front of this community in a way where you will always be remembered. That's what a big-time performance against BYU means for Utah football players. That's why we remember the Eddie Johnsons and the Scott Mitchells and the Brandon Burton blocks and Brett Ratliff coming out of nowhere. Like, that's why you remember Johnny Harleen. That's why you remember Max Hall and Austin Colley and all the names. And 4th and 18 and Beck to Harleen and block kicks and 3 field goals and students rushing the field and a guy in suspenders trying to front Bronco Mendenhall and BYU fans yelling at Kyle's wife. Like, that's beer being poured on people all the time, even though there's no beer in the stadium. Somehow it gets poured on people all the time. Like, we talk about this game in such a way that if you happen to be at the top of your game at the right moment on Saturday, yes, we'll always look back on the season as, wow, how did that get away, right? All of us, locally, nationally, everybody thought Utah would be where BYU was or something close to it, and that can't change, okay? So there's no use in existing in the 4-game losing streak space. But what could shift on Saturday is the way you respond in the biggest sporting event we have in our state and be great for one day and go beat that team one time. And people around here will talk about this team a little bit differently, even though everything we thought would be on the table is not. All right, we're going to continue this conversation throughout the course of not just today, but throughout the week. The rivalry game will carry the bulk of our coverage, but there are other things going on, of course, here locally. We have an NBA team that is struggling mightily. We have a hockey team that's struggling a little bit. We have a soccer team that's no longer playing soccer, but college basketball is going on as well. And so we'll bring Smitty in coming up on the other side to do a little jazz. But I want to get his take on Utah BYU as well. But let me bring in my guy Ken from Lifestyle Men's Health on a Monday. Ken, happy Monday, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, Spence. How are you?
I'm well. I appreciate your time today. So as we've talked about, Dr. Peterson over at Lifestyle Men's Health, she became, a friend, first of all, then a client about a year and a half ago or so. And she asked me, my age, and I told her, and she said, have you ever had your testosterone levels checked? I said, no. And so we did it, and it was a little low. It was all right, but a little low. And a year and a half later, my levels are over 900. I'm down weight. I look better. I feel better. And my workouts are better. I see people that I haven't seen in years, and they're like, hey, what exactly are you doing? Combination for me with testosterone therapy and vitality peptides. Tell me about your experience with Lifestyle Men's Health.
When I met Angela, I went in for the stem cells consultation because I wanted to know what was going on there, because I actually tried the acoustic wave therapy on myself, went through a bunch of treatments, didn't work. So, and being a type 2 diabetic, Spence, it really messes with our vascular system. So I dealt with ED for over 15 years. And so I would try to anticipate moments, but those pills, they're just a Band-Aid. So once I met Angela and we talked about the regenerative stem cells that would treat and help with ED, it was like a cutting-edge treatments, and I was all in. So if you come to our clinic, we'll do the free medical assessment, because we have to do that to know, what we can do and how we can optimize your lives. It's a free 30-minute appointment. We want you to get your confidence and the spontaneity back. We're coming to the end of the year, coming to the new year. this is a great time to schedule an appointment, come in and talk to us.
It's a great deal. Give them a call today. Whether you're in your 40s like me or in your 60s like Ken, it is a great opportunity for you to feel better. As Dr. Peterson says, you don't know how bad you're feeling until you start to feel better. I'm telling you guys, I've tried it for over a year and a half. It's made a big difference. It could do the same for you. So here's the number. It's 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203, 385-458-9203, or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Hey, you're welcome. Hey, one last thing, 3431.
Ooh, Ken off the top rope. I like it. I like it. All right, before we catch a break, got to tell you about Bout Time Pub. Bout Time Pub is Utah's premier sports bar. Amazing food and killer cocktails. Make Bout Time, your place for sports or even brunch. All food is made from scratch, and the new mocktails are out there for those of you who don't partake in alcohol. They have more TVs than tables. Fall, almost winter. Keep Bout Time in mind for any upcoming holiday parties as well. Here are their locations: Ogden, Layton, West Valley, West Jordan, Sandy, Tooele, Harriman, Bluffdale, Lehigh, and Vineyard. Utah Sports Bar celebrating their 15-year anniversary. In-house smoked wings, fresh made from scratch food, brunch availables on the weekends from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., including a build-your-own Bloody Mary bar. They show every UFC event, and it's your home for any sport: baseball, basketball, football, both pro and college. Every Jazz game, they've got League Pass, and they have center ice as well to watch the Utah Hockey Club. More information can be found at bouttimepub.com. Smitty joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. The great Quincy Jones passed away at the age of 91. I don't know that Michael Jackson should have been the leadoff based off all the options we have. We're going to play artists that Quincy Jones had a hand. Maybe we ease off the MJ.
Hey, to be clear, it was the first one you mentioned. Also, we got the radio play here. I gotta dig into the records to get some of the Quincy Jones ones. They're not giving me very many options, unfortunately.
You do Sinatra, okay. But look,
Ray Charles.
Hey, look,
I'll dig deeper. Of course.
I'll tell you what. Occasionally, "Ignition" by R. Kelly comes on my playlist, and I'm like, "What do you? It's a good song. What do you want me to do?"
You're dancing to it.
So what? Hello, Smitty. Let's turn on Smitty's mic here. Let's get Smitty dialed away.
What's your deal with Michael Jackson?
Maybe you haven't Googled it in a minute.
Hey,
I'm gonna back away from this one.
Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson. That's one of the all-time most successful partnerships in.
I'm not talking about how
history.
many records he sold, Smitty.
No.
His success is not arguable. We're on the same page with that one.
Hey, no. But all you have to do is play anything from the. What was the documentary that came out in the last year on Netflix with
the one where
they all got together?
That was good, by the way.
It was really good.
We'll play "We Are the World." We can do that. That one's safe.
World. Yeah.
But Quincy Jones, I mean, a legend, passes away, 91 years old.
No, and he was such an icon in the music industry, and at a time when he was able to assert his leadership in the music industry with a lot of not only new artists but also established artists who wanted to come and work with him, and he had a long run of success, and that's very sad to hear that of his passing.
Certainly. So that's going to be the musical theme on the show today. We'll try to rebound from our awkward start. Richard Smith, you are a number of different things. You are a basketball savant. You are a longtime member of the Utah Jazz. You are a former baseball all-star and competitive softball outfielder extraordinaire. But you're also a man in our community that has been ingrained in the fabric of our sporting culture. And this is a unique week, right? Like Utah BYU football, 102nd meeting, first time in 3 years. BYU breaks their 9-game losing streak a couple years back. They have not won in Salt Lake since 2006. And we have two teams heading in completely different directions. The nature of rivalry games, it's always been an interesting topic to me because if you ever played in one, and I never played for anything that mattered, but if you play throughout the course of your high school or AAU career and the other school is your rival, it feels different. It always does. I love the energy. I think it's a lot of fun. As a man who's been to a lot of these games, what do you make of what we could see on Saturday?
Well, what's exciting about this, first of all, is that if we just go back a few months, right, in July, when all the pre-hype and all that stuff is taking place and everything before the season even started, if you looked at the game on the schedule this Saturday on November 9th, you would have thought, okay, they're going to go into that game. Utah is probably going to be 8-0, and BYU is probably going to be 4-4, right? That would have been the projection in July, and now you get here this week, and the script is completely flipped. And that's one of the great things, as we always talk about sports being live theater, that, you can practice, you can do all the stuff that people do on Broadway, right, for their theater presentation. And then when the curtain goes up in the theater, you know what's going to happen because you have a script and you follow it and you know who's going to get married to who at the end of the musical and whatever. But in sports, you do all the same preparation, and then the curtain goes up and you have no idea what's going to take place in the next couple hours, And so that's what makes it always exciting. And of course, this week with the flip of the scripts and BYU, running away with a lot of stuff right now in terms of the conference and what's happening there and the position they're in, and Utah, stumbling and being the place that they're in. It just makes it more exciting to discuss it, which I know this radio station will do ad nauseum all week long, and we'll talk about the same quarterback issues.
You want to talk about
times,
the Jazz? You want to talk?
And we'll talk about.
Hey, Keontae George can't shoot. Yeah,
hey,
yes, Smitty. We are going to cover Utah BYU football.
Hey,
from every single angle,
and as it should be.
Yes.
I'm just saying, but it's going to be.
Yeah.
And how about you? How about you and Porter and whoever was responsible for getting Kalani Sitake on? I'm like the opening act for these guys.
Yes, you are.
I'm surprised I'm even in the same stage, but
Well, look, you
got Kyle Whittingham.
You lived here how many years, Smitty?
I've been here 43 years.
This is home for you now.
Yes.
Even though you go back to the high school in the soft part of Connecticut where I didn't grow up, but
that's right.
This is home. Yeah. So it's really the only thing that we have where we got Thanksgiving coming up. There are split tables. People are watching this game with anxiety so they don't walk into elders quorum and their BYU the dude in their ward is wearing his blue tie and his blue suit and he's going to give you the crap. So it's the only thing we have in the state that causes that dynamic.
Yeah, well, in our house, my wife is a BYU grad, and I worked at the U for a lot of years when I first came to Salt Lake when I was working both at the University of Utah and with the Jazz. And we have one of those flags that I think is, I don't know if it's been outlawed or you can't get them now or
split one.
Whatever the thing. Yeah, one of those flags where it's down the middle and it says, I forget even what's on the flag. Split house or something or whatever.
The ones I've seen have both logos.
Yeah. Well, this has BYU logo on half and the Utah logo on half, and it said, you know what the word is on the label of the flag is house divided.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what we have, and we'll have that flag up tonight for this week, and it'll be fun.
Well, and you and I were talking about something off air that I think is a worthwhile on-air conversation because I know this week hits some people much differently, and they don't like it. They don't like the anxiety. They don't like the dissension. They don't like the heated exchanges. Now, I don't live online, so we'll let the message board people do the message board people thing. And I don't know how much of that really permeates in real life. I honestly don't. I feel like the people that don't like this week are talking about the mean things somebody will say online about them, which shouldn't matter at all. But like I said, you also get the church back and forth. Obviously plenty of both Ute alumni and students and, Brigham Young, the majority of them being LDS. But there's a religious element to this thing that doesn't exist in very many other rivalries. And it does add to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's always this feeling of, well, if BYU won, it's because they're living right and God loves them.
Yeah.
And if Utah won, they got lucky because they're all sinners. There's always there's this weird thing that kind of ties into it that makes it unique in a way that I think is a lot of fun, but some people don't really enjoy it.
Well, I think a good layer of the uniqueness, Spence, is that within that church dynamic, you have the people who are BYU supporters, who are largely members of the LDS Church, but you also have a good section of active LDS people who are Utah fans, and so you have the BYU people. This is my perspective now over the years. You have the BYU fans who look at the LDS Utah fans and wonder, well, why are you over there? With that group, you should be over here with us. This is where you should be. And the people who are members of the LDS Church and support the U and are big Utah fans. The BYU fans can't understand why they would be in that, put themselves in that position. So that, to me, that's always added another layer. And even we just mentioned the house divided. You have a lot of people, like the Wilson family. Zach and Isaac Wilson. Their family grew up big Utah fans and all the time and supported them, season tickets and all that stuff. And then Zach ends up going to BYU. Mainly because the U didn't think he was good enough and didn't really, recruit him, and then so you have that kind of stuff where even within the house, you have people who are rooting and have different rooting interests. So that's what puts another layer to me. When you're talking about the church thing and and people having their loyalties split that way.
Yeah, no, it's well said. It is funny how BYU fans view, and we're generalizing here. So before I get a bunch of DMs and emails, everybody take a few deep breaths. We're just generalizing. But there is this faction of the BYU fan base that simply just views anybody that is LDS and decided to go apostate Utah with judgment. Then there's this faction of the Utah fan base that's LDS that looks down on the BYU fans as pious and holier than thou, right? And almighty. Yeah. It ties into this dynamic that makes it so interesting. And attendant to it, look, I'm not going to say it's the only college football rivalry that's like this, but Jay Hill, Sione Pua, Utah grads.
Yep.
Aaron Roderick, Kalani Sitake, former Utah coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Whittingham, former BYU player.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't happen in
that's right.
very many other college football rivalries. Yeah. So it's kind of the way I like to describe it, it's kind of like this dysfunctional extended family, right? Where at the end of the day, I believe when you're not playing against each other, you want the other to do well. Now, not fans, right? Like, there are a lot of Ute fans that want BYU to lose every game.
That's right. Yeah,
a lot of BYU fans that want Utah to lose every game. But I think, like, under the family umbrella of coaches and players, it feels like over the years I've mostly witnessed respect. Not all the time, but mostly.
No, I think they do, and I think that's what has always been the interesting part for me, Spence. The people who are involved in it, the people who are in the circle, so to speak, they get it, and they do it with respect. They understand what the whole thing is. You know, that's my opinion. The people who are outside the circle, who are the fans looking down from 30,000 feet or whatever, they're the ones who get all riled up and everything. I wish it would just be, you know, that you could do it in good fun like you do when you're in a locker room and you're with the guys that you play with, and you tease each other about each other's school, where they went and how their school is doing, and you do it good-naturedly, and it's always for fun. And you enjoy it, and you enjoy the back and forth and the teasing and kidding. What happens in this rivalry is that there's too many people who go the negative route and who go, you know, the attacking route, and, you know, everything's bad about the other side or whatever it is. And that's the part that's a little distasteful for me. I wish people would just, like, keep it above the line and have fun with it, and, you know. Because, hey, guess what? On Sunday, the game will be over. And on Monday, everybody will be back to their regular life or whatever. And it doesn't really amount to a lot of things other than hopefully a competitive football game between two familiar schools that the fans are rooting for and can get up for and have fun with it.
So a lot of good points in there. It felt like the fever pitch, and this is just my little echo chamber here, it felt like the fever pitch for hate was at an all-time high when Bronco was coaching BYU. Because Bronco and Kyle, like, you got to call that thing how it is. You could tell that there was no love lost. And, you know, I'm privy to certain things behind the scenes that indicates that they just didn't like each other, and that's all right. But Bronco was like central casting for why Ute fans sometimes don't like BYU. He was pious. He was holier than thou. He quoted scripture during his press conference. You know, I was down at a BYU event emceeing that I did my show prior to the event down at Thanksgiving Point. I've done it 3 years in a row now. And one of the BYU players told the story of Bronco coming to his house to recruit his son. And this BYU player is a current stake president down south. And he said Bronco's first question to his kid is, "What's your favorite scripture?" And the guy's like, "What are we doing? You're here to recruit him to play football, right?" So Bronco was a perfect face for what Ute fans perceive BYU to be. And BYU fans were mad at Kyle for saying no to his, his alma mater and yes to the rival. So it seemed that the fever pitch, as far as the hate goes, was at an all-time high when those two were at it, because Ronnie Mack and Lavelle loved each other.
Yes.
And you could feel it. Urban came over. He invented Team Down South, and that's a stolen, and so, that played into it. Utah was awesome. But it felt like after Kalani got the job, Kalani, to me, deserves a lot of the credit for what I perceive to be a little bit more civility among the two fan bases since he took the job. That's my prism.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Kalani is such a first and foremost such a good person, a centered person. He understands the whole thing from both sides. He understands what it's all about. And he's also one of these guys who's not full of himself. He's doing it, for the right reasons. He's coaching his team. He's got him going in a terrific direction, trajectory, and the way he carries himself and the way he speaks. I think you can't help but like him and root for him because of the way that he goes about his business. Kyle's the same way. Kyle isn't full of himself. Kyle for all of his success is really believes in just coming and getting to work and trying to do your best and respecting your opponent. And I would hope that this week the fans, as they're engaging each other in that regard, heading up to the game Saturday night, would take the lead from the two coaches and understand, hey, this should be about sportsmanship and having a good competitive game and having fun with it and not getting over the line, to the other stuff that really doesn't really serve anybody any good.
Yeah, there's nothing. That's well said. There's nothing not to like about either Kyle or Kalani. And I can tell you it's real because, we're not best friends, but I'm able to get to know them enough where I feel like I have a good read on the type of people they are. All right, before we catch a break, one more thing on this, and then we will talk Jazz coming up. I don't really know what there is to say, but we'll try to say some things about the team coming up in a little bit. So there are two very different paths with these two teams, as you outlined earlier. For BYU, and it's interesting, with the Big 12 chaos we just saw, this is not an elimination game for Brigham Young. Like, I hear a lot of Ute fans, well, let's spoil their path. You can't. Sorry. Like, BYU could still and probably is favored to go to the Big 12 championship game no matter what happens on Saturday night. But undefeated season means a lot. If they can enter maybe the CFP undefeated, maybe they have a chance to host a home playoff game in Provo. Like, there's so many things on the table for them. For Utah, Smitty, and, for a lot of these players that don't know the intensity of this thing because they haven't experienced it or didn't grow up here, Kyle did, Morgan did. Like, the coaches know what's at stake. So for Utah, I guess what's at stake here is maybe one last chance. Like, we're partying like it's 1986 again. It's like one last chance to endear yourself to a community that right now is really bummed out about the way you played, because if you are great for one day against BYU, you become a legend around here. That's got to be what's at stake. I don't know what else. There's still the bowl game thing, and I guess the only thing worse than playing in a throwaway bowl game is not being eligible for one. So two very different dichotomies here.
No, the rivalry game and wanting to have the bragging rights all winter, for your team is important. It's important for every rivalry game. That's really what the biggest nugget is, no matter what the circumstances are from year to year. But for Utah, they're coming into the game playing an undefeated top 15 ranked, top 10 team, whatever BYU is in whatever poll at the moment, and deservedly so. They're playing BYU, an undefeated team. Then next week they have to go to Colorado, who's playing very well. Mm-hmm. And then they come home and they have to play Iowa State, another top conference team. And then they finish the season at Central Florida, which you would say, oh, well, that's not good. That may be an important game for this bowl eligibility thing. With those games that Utah has in front of them, they've got to get to 6 wins to be bowl eligible. Yeah, okay, you use the phrase a throwaway bowl, whether you're going to the Suncoast Bowl or the Alamo Bowl or the whatever it is in Paducahville or wherever it's going to be. That's still something for a school that wants to keep its record intact and its string intact and having something to play for, other than the game in front of you that you have. So these are all important games for Utah, and then you ratchet it up for BYU. That would love to go undefeated and get to the conference championship game and see what happens as far as a CFP type situation. So it's big, other than the rivalry aspect of it for both teams.
Yes, it is. All right. Before we catch a break, we'll do a little Jazz coming up. I looked at the schedule. This could be 0-20 or maybe even worse. Let's bring in Ken from Lifestyle Men's Health on a Monday. Ken, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Spence, how about you?
I'm well. I appreciate the time. So, as I referenced earlier, I've been utilizing testosterone therapy and vitality peptides for about a year and a half, and they've made a massive difference. I sleep better. I don't have brain fog. My workouts are so much better. And ultimately, it's biohacking. So you can turn back the clock a little bit and kind of recapture your youth. So that's been my experience, Ken. Let's hear about yours.
It's interesting. I'm in my mid-60s, and it's the same as that you've been experiencing. I feel more vibrant. I think clear. Literally, people look at me and say, there's no way that you're in your mid-60s. But my point being how I'm optimizing my life, how I'm performing, how I'm playing tennis. I play tennis 2 to 3 times a week. And it literally just gives you energy. So if you're out there, you got a little bit of that, what they call beer belly, you don't have to accept that. With what we can help you with the testosterones, with the peptides, we can curve that and really get you looking fantastic for the new year coming up.
What's that special offer, Ken, you have for our listeners who call you today?
Well, the special offer I'm going to do is anyone who signs up for our erectile dysfunction treatments, before we've been doing 3 months of free testosterone, I'm going to do 6.
Whoa.
6 months for those who call in today.
You keep bringing these deals like a year and a half after I signed up. That would have been helpful if you did a year and a half ago, Ken.
I wasn't a partner with Angela then.
Well played, sir. 6 months. That's the best offer we've had. Pick up the phone. 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203. Or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Spence.
All right, got to tell you about Advanced Window Products, the #1 rated window company in Utah. Nate Orchard, mayor of Sac Lake City, my guy Jake Weber. Locally owned, sales and installation in-house, no middleman markup. They build, install, and guarantee for life. That lifetime warranty is transferable. So if you're getting ready to sell your home and you get home, this time of year and it's cold inside, you can feel the draft coming through your windows, call them today and save $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. But if you anticipate buying or selling a home in a few months, if you call today, you can get on the schedule and lock in that savings of $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. So today's the day. Give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or online at advancedwindows.com. All right, more with Smitty coming up next. Then Coach Witt, his media from earlier. Kalani Satake joins us live. And then Josh Furlong from KSL. Keep it here on ESPN 700. kind of a perfect song, right, for a rivalry week. A little "We Are the World."
Right.
A little "Let's Be United," right?
We should all join in on the chorus, Spence, and
I don't think we're
start
allowed.
waving our hands back and forth.
Can you sing?
Swaying side to side. Oh, I can. Oh, I love to sing. I sing very badly, just like I love to play golf, but I golf very badly.
Okay, fair enough.
You know.
Maybe we'll bring that. You know what? Just play that song all week. "We Are the World." Okay, everybody, a few deep breaths.
Kumbaya.
It's all good. Yeah,
That's
it's all
right.
good.
That's right.
Love your brother.
Yep.
Love your neighbor.
There we go.
Right? A very famous spiritual teacher said that once upon a time.
It's a good theme.
It is indeed.
Yes.
Richard Smith is live in studio doing a little Utah BYU last segment. All right. We have you in to talk Jazz. You spent 40 years in the NBA. You spent 40 years with the Utah Jazz. And so I guess we will. Smitty, I don't know when they're going to win a game.
Hey.
I mean, I've got their schedule pulled up. Like, this is as bad as I think it has been for a long, long time. And certainly I'm for it, as you know.
Yep.
Because I do think – but I do want – like, this is really hard. Like, what they're doing is really, really hard, isn't it?
Hey, Spence, the whole thing is difficult. It's hard to win in the NBA, period, okay? It's even more difficult to win on a consistent level in the NBA. It's even another tier to try and get near the top where you're competitive enough, where you're one of the 5, 6, 7 teams each year that has a legitimate chance at actually going deep into a playoff run. But this, as we've talked about before, this is exactly what the Jazz set up to do. Nobody wants to be bad, but at the same time, the Jazz knew what they were doing when they set all this up, when they traded everybody away, when the coach left town, when they changed everything around, and they knew that at some point they would have to pay the piper, so to speak. And, this start, hey, think about it. 2 years ago, the first year of the so-called rebuild, they get out of the gate 10-3, and everybody's going, whoa, wait a minute, this is brilliant, whatever. And then it slowly dissipated and went the other way as the season went on. And then last year they had that nice run in the middle of the year after Christmas where they had the best record for like a 1 month stretch there in the middle of the season. And then they traded away a couple of guys at trade deadline, and then it fell apart again. And now they're coming out of the blocks the way that you have asked them to do for the last few years. And so, and you're exactly right. When you look at the schedule, it's hard to predict where a win is going to come from. They're on the road now, continuing this 4-game road trip in Chicago tonight, and then Milwaukee, and then finish in San Antonio before they come home and play Phoenix and Dallas next week. It is a tough road to hoe, and but this is what they've set up to do, and it's going to be a very difficult early part of the season, and you're right, it's going to be hard to see any light at the end of the tunnel for any time soon.
And I do not want to diminish the difficult ask that I know this is, okay? I just don't see another path. And as you know, being in the front office for as long as you were, paths randomly manifest themselves out of nowhere, okay? And so obviously you leave space for a billionaire owner who's afraid of the second apron and wants to shed talent and is looking for picks and clean books, and the Jazz have all that. Like, I know that can happen. But the fact of the matter is you can't rely on that. And so from my prism and my seat, the only way to do this is slow and long and hard, and hope you get a little luck around, just at some point, hope you get some lottery luck, or hope Cody's better than we think, or Keontae learns to shoot straight, or whatever all those variables are. But make no mistake, this is a tough ask on the fan base. It's a tough ask on broadcasters to call games, and it's really tough on young players who up to this point have always been the best at what they do where they've been, and most of them have probably won high school state championships, played high-level AAU, did something in college with great success, and now they're getting their heads kicked in every night. What's the danger in that?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of factors there, but you also have to throw in how it affects the coaching staff.
For sure,
And the young coach that the Jazz have in Will Hardy, who by all accounts is a very, very studious, a very hardworking guy. He's trying to formulate forge, I should say, a career early in his coaching career by being a head coach in his mid-30s, and he's got a team that's in this situation, and that's tough on him. He's got to be questioning himself night in and night out about the things he's doing. Is he doing the right stuff? Is he handling it the right way? Is he balancing minutes? Is he doing what the front office wants him to do, and playing guys in certain positions to help in their development and projection as NBA players? I mean, there's so many levels to it, and yet the losing permeates the locker room bigger than anything. And the bigger the hole you dig early in the year, the tougher it becomes, because you realize as a group, as the year evolves, as it goes on, you become more and more cognizant and accepting of the notion that we're not going anywhere with this group at this time. We have a game tomorrow night. We have a game on Thursday. We have 2 games on whatever it is, and you're looking at it when you have a losing record and you're at the bottom looking up, and you realize we're not going anywhere. Now it takes it to another level where the players have to have that mental stamina to want to be able to keep coming every day to practice, to try and get better, to try and show how they can contribute to a winning effort. The coaching staff is trying to figure out, how do we keep everybody engaged night in and night out, without losing guys along the way from a mental perspective, a buy-in perspective. That is the difficult part, and especially in an 82-game NBA season, that when you dig a hole early, it is so hard to get out of, and it is so much effort just to try and bring the group along with you, on the journey that you're in the middle of. It is a tough ask, and when you're younger and you don't have the experience, it's even more so, because those kind of things can really get embedded in you in terms of how your career is going to evolve as well.
So let's dig into, I always enjoy listening to coaches, right? So that's why I still love listening to Hubie Brown if he's on a call of a game. I thought Jeff was the best. It's so crazy to me that ESPN claimed that they didn't want to bring him back because they heard he wanted to get back into coaching. Then they hired Doc, who left him like 3 weeks later. Then they hired Redick, who's coaching the Lakers. So, Doug Collins on the broadcast, or Steve Kerr, whenever I can listen to a coach, I like to listen to coaches. And Will has been really interesting to listen to after games, because he doesn't say, as the kids would say, the quiet part out loud per se, but he is speaking now in a different way that he's spoken over the past couple of years, saying things like, well, eventually we need to get to where we want to be, and if we're ever going to get there, we can't lean on excuses for now. He is speaking in a future tense way after games that he hasn't prior to. But ultimately, knowing coaches, and you got to know the best that we had, the 2 best that we had here in Frank and Jerry, if you got Will in an honest moment, what do you think he'd say? This has to be eating him alive. They don't have a prayer. They don't have a chance. He doesn't have the tools. Yeah. He does not have the players. I wondered, and look, they picked up his 5th-year option, okay? Meaning it's 2 years of options that are picked up. This is year 3. He's safe next year. He's safe the year after. But if this thing doesn't get turned around, he's going to have a resume with a lot of losses on it, and coaches don't love that.
That's right, and that's the hard part for him in his career. He's trying to build a career. Yeah. He's trying to show, the rest of the league and the basketball world, that, hey, I know what I'm doing, and, I can learn as I go along, and I can get better, and I know how to manage players, and I know how to, deal with in-game strategies and all those kinds of things that go into coaching, being a head coach. But when you have a group like this, and a group that's struggling, and you can tell there's going to be a long road. That weighs on you mentally, and that's the biggest thing, is trying to keep your perspective. He's not coming from a background where, say, I don't know who maybe JB Bickerstaff, who's the coach in Detroit now. They have a team that's similar to the Jazz, a young team that's going to struggle for a while, that they're trying to build up. But JB has a track record in the past, especially the last job he had in Cleveland, where he did very well, and you can see he's got that experience. He's got those games under his belt as a head coach for several years in the league. There, people know, okay, he knows what he's doing. He's just got to get some players and got to massage some stuff and move some pieces around, and eventually we're going to be on that track. Will Hardy doesn't have that luxury at the current moment, because this is his first head coaching job. So he's coming in, and he's first year they struggle, second year they struggle, third year they're just beginning, but they're out of the gate stumbling to begin with. He's wondering how people are looking at him and how he's being affected in terms of his career, because I'll tell you, there are a lot of guys who got their one shot at being a head coach, and it didn't work well. People respected them. They thought they were very good at what they did. They liked their work ethic. They liked their temperament. They liked their approach to the job. Didn't have success, mainly because you didn't have players, and they lasted 3 years or 4 years with their teams. They got let go, and then you never see them again as a head coach. They recycle back into the thing as assistant coaches, and because they're well respected within the circles of the coaching fraternity, and by teams and organizations around the league, but sometimes they don't get another shot because of that, because they don't have anything on their resume to show, hey, I've proven that I can do this, right? So Will Hardy is in that tough position, because, yeah, he's got a couple more years to ride with this group at least. You hope he gets more than that, because he looks like he's the right guy, and you just hope he can hold on in terms of his approach, in terms of what he's dealing with as a head coach night in and night out, not winning, and that it doesn't beat him down, because to turn this around, you're right, Spence, the draft, if you get a free agent, okay, if you make a trade, okay, those are the three ways that you can improve your team. Those are the things you can control to some extent. But there's another component we always talk about that is beyond your control, that you have no say in what's going to happen, but something might present itself, as you mentioned a minute ago, and you have to be prepared to react to that, whether it's, again, another team trying to unload a big-time player, or trying to unload a salary or something. But you don't know if that's going to happen this year before the trade deadline. You don't know if it's going to happen next year. You don't know if it's going to happen anytime in the next 5 years, because those are things that are beyond your control. So you don't know if Golden State's going to hang it up and want to move some guys at some point, if the Clippers get frustrated and want to move some guys, or whoever it is. And those are the things that are hard for fans to accept, because they assume that you, as an organization, as an ownership, have control of everything. You just have to push the right buttons and make the right moves. But there is an element out there that are things that are not within your control, that you have to be able to react to and be able to make decisions on if and when they become available. And that's the big gray area that's always hanging over you, that you never know if and when that's going to happen.
Okay, so.
Yeah, and I like, Spence, right there. That was a perfect. No, that was a perfect take, because that frustrated exhale.
It's hard.
It is exactly what it is. That's what they're going through.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's not pretty. Nobody likes it. The room is always heavy. Okay, whether it's practice, whether it's on the team bus, whether it's on a road trip like they're on now, because you're trying to find some ray of light that tells you, hey, we can turn this around. We can get better. We need to group together 3 or 4 or 5 games where we feel like, we're clicking, we're doing something at the moment, and it's early, okay? It's only 6 games in, okay? But the early returns, like the elections, are not probably what it's going to be. But if you want to hang your hat on something, you're looking and seeing the Jazz are still a very bad defensive team. They're a team that so far can't shoot the ball, okay? They're also a team that doesn't seem to be really well connected, with each other when they're on the floor. They don't have any kind of identity. So when you're dealing with all of those things at the same time, that is a tough get, because sometimes you might have one of those and you can concentrate on that area and try and shore it up somehow. But when you got all of those happening simultaneously and you're trying to juggle all those balls in the air at the same time, it is tough to do and it's tough to manage.
So, since you brought up the election, is it possible just to say the final score is incorrect and we won and just claim the win?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
can you do that?
Well, apparently.
I don't know what the other option is.
Well, apparently you can, because apparently no matter what the scoreboard says, you say, well, they're wrong. Like that's not right.
We won. We won.
Yeah, we won the game.
Let's just do it.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on there.
So let's dig into the 6-0 Utah Jazz. All right. So
6-0. I like that. I like how you.
Hey, I wasn't there. I didn't see the score. Don't come at me. So I'm going to draw a parallel here, because the fact of the matter is, and you're one of the reasons, we are spoiled as Jazz fans. We've never won a championship, but we've rarely had bad teams. And when we did, it didn't last long, because the front office iterations you were a part of always made good moves to get us back to competitiveness pretty quick. The last time it was this bad was probably Ty's final year, right? And as you were describing a coach who gets an opportunity and the roster isn't great or whatever, and it goes sideways, and that coach never gets another opportunity, Tyrone Corbin's name popped into my head. Mm-hmm. And obviously, Scotty hired him in New York. You've known him forever. He's the sweetest guy in the world. And Dennis didn't like when I said when I would use this line on air, because he heard me say it. I was of the opinion that Dennis Lindsey's first day on the job was Tyrone Corbin's last. I just didn't think he was going to rehire him. And so, obviously players like Al, who played well here, Paul Millsap, who is still a Jazz legend, moved off some vets in the name of seeing what you had with youngsters. But that roster is much better than the roster that we're dealing with here. That's why it's a loose parallel. So the rookies were Trey Burke and Gobert. Alec was in his second year. Hayward was in his third. Favors was in his third. You had players like Jeremy Evans, Then you bring in vets like Richard Jefferson and Andres Biedrins just to pay somebody to play for you. And ultimately, you won 25 games that year. But that year was about bringing Marvin Williams, who obviously was a pro while he was here. But that year, Smitty, was about, right, like, what do we have in Gordon? Is this Rudy thing real? Ennis Kanter was on the team. So you had 5 or 6 young players like they have now that you were trying to do your calculus, like, can they be part of this moving forward when we're back to competitiveness? Will they be on the roster? Gordon was. Obviously, Fave was as well. The Kanter stuff got weird. Rudy was ready to play. You guys move on from Ennis. We know the history. Mm-hmm. But there's some similarities, right, between 13 and 14 and 24, yeah?
Sure. Yeah, and you're right. That's what was happening at that time. The Golden State thing, by the way, you mentioned Richard Jefferson, Andres Biedrins, the Rush kid, Brandon Rush was part of that. But that was, Spence, when you look, if you looked at it, you would see that was probably, in NBA annals, the most lopsided trade ever made in NBA history, because the Jazz got those guys who were all on expiring contracts. That's the reason that the Jazz took them in at that time. They were gonna have that money available the next year. They took that with several draft picks with it to trade for the Murray kid, Kevin Murphy, who we had drafted the second round the year before. All those guys came in, and all the Jazz sent out to Golden State was Kevin Murphy, who was then cut. And the whole thing for Golden State was opening up all this space for money so that they could they could go get Andre Iguodala. See, now at the time, we thought they were opening up the space to go get Dwight. How quick is Dwight Howard? Was it Dwight Howard? Was it Dwight Howard was a free agent?
And he ended up going to the Lakers.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
But it ended up being Andre Iguodala was the guy they were trying to target and get after to put together with Curry and Thompson and Green, and then they took off the way they did, right? So that's what they were trying to do. So the Jazz, so when you're in that position, like the Jazz were at that time, you make a move, you don't give up anything. You're giving up a second-round guy who maybe wasn't even going to be on our team the following year, and you got players who are on expiring contracts. You got draft picks, and you also got money. You got $3 million thrown in the deal from Golden State, and all of that stuff, was part of Dennis Lindsey's grand plan to try and open up space and try and move some pieces around and hope that at some point, you can jump on something that's going to help your team, to get forward. Now, what happens in the meantime? Rudy Gobert shows up. Okay. Third year, fourth year. Okay. That's what the Jazz now are hoping happens with one of the guys they have on the roster now.
Right, yeah.
Who is that? Who knows who that is, right? The Jazz also use one of the draft picks, the draft pick they ended up getting from Denver in a trade on draft night we've talked about before. They got them Donovan Mitchell. And Donovan Mitchell shows up much quicker, much better, much more impactful than we thought he would be right out of the gate. So we were smart. We were good. We were lucky. Whatever label you want to put on, it's more luck than anything else.
You need all of it, right?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
And so you have all that stuff going on, and that's what the current Jazz are hoping to do. They're hoping that somewhere along the line somebody clicks. You get an opportunity like that falls in your lap that you can take advantage of, and then you keep putting the parts together. The guys they have right now, in my opinion, it looks like they're having trouble connecting with each other, and it looks like they're having trouble just playing with each other. So it doesn't look to me like it's a very good mix of guys. Maybe you have some talent, but I'm not sure how well they're playing together. A lot of it also is that a lot of them are inexperienced, and they're stumbling over themselves trying to find their footing. That takes time, and that takes a lot of mistakes that you have to be willing to live through. So that's the part that the current Jazz are dealing with at this moment, and it's not going to get any easier here in the coming months. It's going to be a difficult road for them to hoe.
Yeah, it's hard. It is. And even though I agree with it and think for the first time since Dennis took off and Quinn and everybody took off and they traded everybody, it feels like they're finally doing the thing. I still do not diminish out what a tough ask this is on everybody involved. All right, Smitty, before I set you loose, do you dare give me a Utah BYU final score prediction? Do you dare?
No.
Oh, I knew it.
Well,
You
know how
I knew it.
You know how I sit on those things.
I know.
But I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
You know what I do think? I just think it when I look at it, the roles are reversed from what you thought they were going to be before the season started, right? Mm-hmm. BYU's the undefeated team. The Utah's the team that's muddling around at 4-4. It's a perfect scenario for both teams to all of a sudden do something they haven't done this year. In other words, for Utah to put something together where they have a consistent game offensively all game long. For BYU has had some games where, they were treading along and it was, maybe we got to have something happen, and then something good did happen. And that's what happens when you have a special season. The plays break your way when you need them to break your way. And so is that going to continue to happen for BYU, or is this going to be the game where they finally stumble and lose a game? I'm not sure losing a game for them, in the grand scheme of things, would be the worst thing for them, because maybe it helps them to refocus, on the last month of this conference season. And to your point, I think they're still in the driver's seat, with other things that are going to happen.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
To get to the conference championship game, which is all that matters. Because once you get there, as Utah, showed the last few years with Rose Bowl games, conference games, getting to the Rose Bowl. Once you get into that championship game, anything can happen, like did for the U. Again, talking about things breaking your way when they played USC in the conference championship game a few years ago, and Caleb Williams gets hurt in the second quarter, and he's stumbling around the rest of the game, and the U takes advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, you wake up next day, and they're going to the Rose Bowl. So it's going to. I think it's going to be. I hope it's a fun game. I hope it's exciting. And I hope those of you who are brave enough to go sit in the 28-degree weather or whatever on Saturday night at 11:30 in the fourth quarter are more stout than I am, because some of us have gotten old and we've gotten soft.
Well, Smitty, I don't blame you at all. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend. We'll see you soon, okay?
Thanks, man.
All right, the great Richard Smith. Want to bring in Ken from Lifestyle Men's Health on a Monday. Ken, happy Monday, man. How we doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Spence. How about you?
I'm well. So I am a man in my mid-40s, and Dr. Peterson about a year and a half ago prescribed me some testosterone therapy based on some tests that we've done, and my levels are now over 900. My workouts are great. I feel amazing. The sleep quality certainly has improved, and my skin looks better. Vitality peptides as well. So those are the two products I've used in my 40s via Lifestyle Men's Health that's really helped everything for me. What about you? What's your experience?
When I went to my primary care physician last fall, and I was, working out, doing okay, but man, I felt like I wanted to take a nap every day. Went to him, let's do your testosterone. I was 425. Said, that's great news. You're in the normal range. So then I meet, now my new partner, Dr. Angela Peterson, and she says, that's on the low level. And we would like to see people 700 plus. And I'm a little bit higher than you. I'm 1087, my testosterone level last
Ken,
time.
You don't have to brag, Ken. I don't need to hear it. You don't have to brag.
But my point is, just working out just feels invigorating. I've never really kind of been that type of guy, but now I am. And it's because of the testosterone and the peptides that I'm taking that's really just that peak performance that my body's now performing at by taking these products.
What's the special offer? It's a good one for our listeners who call you today.
Yes, it is. So for those that, kind of step up and let's deal with this ED the right way. Let's put Band-Aids on it. Let's fix this. So anybody who signs up, and we'll take half off of that treatment itself. Then instead of 3 months of testosterone for free, I'm going to throw in 6. Angela's going to be disappointed. Well, she'll get on the radio next time. But anyway, I'm just throwing it out there for anybody who calls today. They get 6 months of TRT for free.
It's a massive deal. It's the best one they've offered, and they always offer good ones. So if you've waited, congratulations, you win. But that means you have to call right now. 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203. Or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Spence. Appreciate it.
Can hear from Coach Witt coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Ake hopping on the show today. Always enjoy my conversations with Coach Kalani. He's going to hop on probably around 4 o'clock. We're a little fluid with that situation, so we'll bring that to you coming up in just a little bit. Josh Furlong covers Utah for KSL. We'll stop by. Of course, rivalry week. By the way, how are you on your enunciation? I want to be clear. I'm not judging anyone here because over the years, I've Daffy Ducked rivalry week like a million times. Watching the local broadcast last night, getting ready for the week, seeing how they're covering it. I heard 4 or 5 rivalry weeks. They happen. Have you ever got on this before?
I don't know about the rivalry week one. Rivalry week. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, it's you Daffy Duck it, and we all do it. We've all done it at some point.
I mean, I grew up, to be clear, with like a pretty gnarly lisp.
I didn't know that.
You can hear it make its way out every once in a while. If you pay attention, you probably will now. But I don't know about the R's or the double up there. I think I'll be good with rivalry week.
So that's, of course, going to be a lot of our coverage throughout the course of the week. We have some fun remotes we'll tell you about, a lot of good guests on the show to get you ready for the big game coming up on Saturday. Utah is a 4-point underdog as of now. BYU is your favorite. But as we do every single Monday during the college football season, if you missed it from earlier, here is the head ball coach for the Utes, Coach Witt.
Okay, rivalry week. I guess we haven't said that for a little over 3 years, and so season has flown by in a way. In a way, it's taken forever. But anyways, it's time for the in-state rivalry. Our guys we're both in bye weeks, both schools in bye weeks, and so certainly seasons have gone completely different directions than what was anticipated at the onset. I guess that shows that those preseason rankings and thoughts really don't mean a whole lot. And you got to go out and play the games, and things happen during the course of the season to alter the paths of teams, and so that's what happened this year. But our guys are really excited about the game, obviously. Good to get back home to Rice-Eccles. Had a really good, productive bye week last week, and we'll resume practice today. They've had 3 days off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and so anxious to get back on the field today and resume preparations and get ready for the game on Saturday. So questions? Okay, Justin, go ahead.
Okay, where has your identity gone? You've been known for physicality and attention to detail for decades, and it seems like you've lost that in the last month. How have you addressed this issue during the bye week?
I would agree that we're not as physical this year as we typically have been, and you really gauge that, at least we gauge it, by how you run the ball and how you defend the run. And we haven't been as good at that this year. Tough to pinpoint one exact reason for that. But we haven't been our usual selves in that regard, and that has been our identity as well. And so they go hand in hand, and the ability to run the ball and play action pass off of that's been our formula for success for a lot of years. And the ability on defense to turn teams one-dimensional by taking away the run and forcing them to throw has not surfaced this year either. So that's certainly been a big part of our issue this year. Issues. Yeah.
You had talked about last week, Brandon and Isaac were splitting tests. Have you made a determination?
Yeah, we've got a good plan right now, and we'll keep it to ourselves, obviously, but we have a plan going forward. And, I guess nothing's ever set in stone, but we feel like we've got a situation that is best for us and gives us the best chance to win.
When you put in Brandon the last game, you said that you were looking for a spark.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, was it something that he showed you that led to, hey, let's give him a shot maybe in practice, as opposed to, well, the other, not working with the other one, so let's just try him?
A little both. We weren't very productive offensively. Haven't been productively much this season since the first couple games, but it was a little of both, and just thought that Brandon had been practicing extremely well as the number 2 guy, and just thought, given the circumstances, it made sense to give him a chance and see what he could do. So both things are correct.
Kyle, this is the first time in a while that Utah has been the underdog heading into the BYU-Utah matchup. How is it different in terms of preparation, how the players view the game, how you view the game, and is it different having that chip on your shoulder heading into the game this week?
Well, typically, historically, we've been pretty good in that situation, with the chip on our shoulder, as you said, mentality. I'm not sure, the point spread doesn't really affect our thinking or how we go about our business or anything like that, other than maybe feeling like, that's unusual for us. You're right. It's unusual, and so it's something that hasn't occurred for quite a while, but that's not our driving force or driving motivating factor.
Brandon Rose has been here for a few years. How have you seen his development over his time at Utah?
He's done well, and he was really doing well last year in addition, but had that injury that knocked him out for 6 or 8 weeks, which really set him back, and then didn't get much of anything going last year because of that. Spring ball, had some reps. Isaac got a bunch of the reps as well, but Brandon has made steady and continual progress since he's been in the program. Is playing his best football right now as a Ute. Listen, practice, there's not a big body of work to gauge it off in game, but in a game situation. But he's done a nice job in practice and continues to get better. And that's why you coach him is to hopefully make him better.
BYU has obviously improved quite a bit year to year. Who or what is the strength of that offense?
I'd say the QB is the catalyst. You look at individual rushers, individual receivers. There's nobody that just jumps out statistically. It's a collaborative effort, but the quarterback is the catalyst, in my opinion, and playing good football. He's amongst the league leaders in pass efficiency. He's made some just a bunch of really timely runs during the course of the season, runs that have made big difference maker type of runs. And so I would say that is without a doubt the guy that makes it all go. But again, he's got a good supporting cast, but again, nobody is just jumping out on the stat line. I don't know if they have a top 10 receiver or a top 10 running back, but you don't need to. You don't have to do that to be successful. And then as a team, very opportunistic football team. They're playing good complementary defense, offense to each other. Defense is taking the ball away like crazy. Offense is protecting the ball. They're number 2 in the country, in the conference in turnover margin. So they're doing a really good job playing off each other offensively and defensively.
Cal, kind of going off the question that Justin asked about identity, is it harder in this NIL era to kind of stick to your identity, knowing that you kind of have to appease guys, or what's your approach on that?
Much harder, and it's. I think there's a lot of teams across the country that are feeling and going through similar situations. When you, 4, 5, 6 years ago, before the advent of the portal, whenever that was, you might replace 25 guys out of 125 on your team. Now you're replacing 45 plus, and the culture. I don't know if diluted is the right word, but it's, before you had 100 guys teaching 25 guys how we do our thing, and now it's almost a 50-50 split, the new guys as opposed to the guys that have been in the program. But it's not unique to us. It's across the country, and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of different results throughout the country, because it has had an effect, and it will continue to have an effect. And whoever handles it best, and whoever, it's almost coming down to a sheer talent thing. That sheer talent is, who's one in the country? Oregon. Who's number 1 in the country in NIL budget? Oregon. Who's number 2 and 3? Probably Georgia and Ohio. It's starting to fall right in line. If you remember, I said this a couple years ago that things are going to start mirroring very soon. In the top 25, the NIL budgets, and to a certain extent, that's happening.
Kyle, in the vein of the portal and just how you build your program, obviously you've not had a lot of turnover in comparison to other programs in terms of the foundational pieces that you've had.
Well, we did have 45 new guys this year.
True, yeah.
On the roster, so that's darn near half.
Given, I guess, the impacts of that, has it changed, I guess, the way you see your coaching philosophy and the way this year has gone? Has it changed the way that you might approach it? in the future?
I think for certain. And, you got guys that come to the program and are here for a year or two and either leave, or you've got grad transfers that only had a year or two left. And so there's just, it's constantly in flux. And I don't want to say it's like you're hiring mercenaries every year, but it's a situation where, again, you got to collect as much talent as quickly as you can, and then hope it gels and comes together and you get results. And it is a different approach and different strategy than when you had guys just marinate in your program for 4 and 5, 6 years, and it is different. But again, they're not making excuses or complaining, because the entire country is going through the same thing. I just feel that maybe our culture and our the way we did things gave us an edge back, when that could be possible to have happen.
This rivalry series became dominant when you guys went to the Pac-12 and they went independent. Before that, I think if you go back like the last 20 years, I believe the Utes had like 11-9 advantage, right? And then there was separation.
I think it's more than that, over 20 years before.
20, yeah,
so
like
30 years ago.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's been cyclical in a way.
But I'm wondering, now that you're back in the same conference, at least for the time being, would it surprise you if it got more even like it was in the Mountain West days at the end?
It could very well. I don't know. Time will tell. I mean, why speculate on speculation? But yeah, but who knows? I mean, who knows where college? Who knows if we'll be in the same conference in 2 years? I mean, who knows? So I can't really give you a good answer other than being in the same conference. Certainly, I don't want to say it just is an equalizer of sorts, I guess you could say, and especially from a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah, to kind of go back to the transfer portal, obviously with quarterbacks like the NFL, they're starting to become the highest paid position in college football. In terms of a roster building perspective and what you've seen from Isaac, has there been any pause, I guess, from what you've seen from his play to potentially view him as the future of this program moving forward? I know that's a very broad question, but just curious based off of your perspective.
Well, just generally speaking, we got a ton of belief in Isaac, and we think he's got a big upside. We didn't know he'd be thrust into the starting role a game and a half into the season. The idea and the plan was, hopefully Cam stays healthy, Isaac gets sporadic playing time along the way and continues to develop and really takes over in spring as the number one guy. I mean, everything was accelerated so much, and it's almost, I don't want to say it's unfair to Isaac, because there are other true freshmen in the country that are thrust into starting roles, one reason or another. But the bottom line is we have a lot of belief in Isaac, and it'll be, important to see how the year finishes out. He's had nearly 400 snaps. I think he's had 397 snaps at quarterback so far this year, and that's far more than we anticipated him having. But silver lining is he's going to be that much further ahead in the future because of these snaps that he's had.
You've mentioned no wholesale changes offensively, obviously, with the mid-season change. What is the possible dynamic shift with the quarterback room with Mike Jakey taking over, whether it's play calling or how it matches up with the quarterback skill set, or even their relationship with Mike? I wonder how that quarterback dynamic is with him.
Well, I think it was not a huge impact. I mean, Andy Ludwig coached the quarterbacks and coordinated for years, and so it's not like it's uncommon for that to happen. That's very commonplace for coordinators to be the QB coach. Now it's going to become less common going forward, because when they change the rules, like I said, this year everyone's added to their staff to free up the coordinators in a lot of instances. But the quarterbacks have a really good relationship with Mike. He's been their guy since last spring, and it's as far as the way they operate, it's all status quo and how it has been, other than he is now putting the game plan together and calling the plays.
Looking at BYU, you have a lot of guys that were formerly on your staff running the program there.
To say the least, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you feel like they've done, I guess, well to find success this season with such a cohesive roster? It seems like all cylinders are working for them. I mean, what has kind of been the outside perspective from you?
You'd have to ask them for the real answer to that, but I know that they've got 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 guys when you count admins and all the peripheral positions that were once here, and so they're doing a really nice job, obviously, and I just would say that they are hitting on all cylinders, like you said, and again, playing off each other. That you're hard pressed to find a team in the country that does a better job of complementary football than what they're playing right now.
Given the fact Jay Hill played here and worked for you, when you look at his defense, how much will it help during the game? How much are you looking at a lot of what you did and you know what he's thinking? And how much has he evolved in the years since he's moved on from here?
Well, he's evolved, but the basic principles, the basic fundamentals, the basic philosophy is still intact. But Jay has done a terrific job putting his own stamp on it, just like Morgan's done a terrific job of putting his own stamp on the defense here. But the basic, the building blocks are the same, and that's really what wins games. Blocking, tackling, how you defeat blocks. All that stuff is what wins and loses games. It's not plays, it's players and how they fundamentally operate. And he's got those guys doing a great job.
In regards to Isaac getting those almost 400 snaps, and I guess with whoever starts against BYU, is all experience good experience, or do you have to make sure that you're helping build the quarterback's confidence by protecting them well, getting them in the right situations, play call wise, etc.?
Sure, I would say most all experience is mostly good experience. How about that? But you can, there are situations where a guy goes in and becomes shell-shocked because it's happening so fast and he's not ready for it, and it can do some damage for a period of time. I'm not saying that's what happened to Isaac, but I've seen that happen in the past to quarterbacks and other positions for that matter, but mostly as a quarterback. It's the most important position in football, hands down. It's not even close. But have seen where guys got thrust in there too early, and even at the pro level, that's happened. So yeah, you can see that happening, but most of the time, experience is experience, and you're learning and growing along the way, regardless of results. But if it's too extreme or too dramatic in the wrong direction, that can have a long-lasting effect.
Final question.
You've been very candid about
Always candid. Yeah, every day of my life, candid. It's a good way to describe me. Okay.
You've been very candid about the conference realignment race, just how you think the next 3 to 5 years are going to shape, how there's a potential Power 2 or Super League. How do you feel like winning and the state of Utah's program is right now for the future of that potential Power 2? And obviously that's speculative, but is there more pressure on you as a head coach knowing the stakes of those futures?
Well, there's always pressure on a head coach, regardless of circumstances. It doesn't matter if you're a Pop Warner coach. You've got pressure, and you feel it. And if you're all in, then you care. And it doesn't matter the level. But I would say it's more a body of the work of the last 20 years, 30 years, more so than 1 year. But when that realignment, and I think most of the TV contracts in about 5 years are up, and I think that's when it's really, the stuff's going to hit the fan, and things are going to, unless they accelerate it. They could accelerate it, and it could happen sooner. But to answer your question, I think you're going to look big picture. There's so many things involved. Not just your win-loss record overall, although that'll be of big importance. How big is your stadium, your following, and just how, just your overall state of the program and what you bring to the table. That's really what it boils down to, is what do you bring to the table as a program, as a fan base, to make yourself attractive to be in that Power 2 or whatever it ends up being. So appreciate you guys. All right, here we go.
All right, there he is, Coach Witt. We replay his media availability every Monday throughout the college football season. If you missed any of it, just head to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. All right, let's bring in my guy, Doug, from Farmer and Chemist. Doug, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon. Life is good.
Life is
How are
good.
you today?
I'm well. This is kind of an anxious week. Maybe people don't sleep as well, right, as they typically do with Utah, BYU on the horizon. I've utilized the gummies you gave me to get great sleep. So let's start there. For our anxious college football fans, how can you help them get some extra sleep this week?
Oh, man, that is so many of us this weekend. So to help with your sleep and being able to kind of relax in the evening, we have amazing Yummy Gummies. Yummy Gummies have 35 milligrams of CBD, 5 milligrams of CBN, and 4 milligrams of THC, just enough to let your body and your mind relax and get a good night's sleep and get ready for next weekend.
And also, there are people out there with physical pain, and you want to be real careful with those opioids, and you want to be real careful with pain meds. And so, we can get some people off them, or if people have never been able to find a solution for their physical pain, how can you guys help them over at Farmer and Chemist?
Yeah, it's such a serious issue. We say that pain is the sixth vital sign, and that's kind of been overused over the years with all the opioids that you mentioned. And so the alternative to that is a natural product. It's hemp derived, and it's CBD with a little bit of THC and some CBG. That's an important distinction. G is an anti-inflammatory. And so when you blend that with the other two, you get amazing pain relief without the addiction potential, without the terrible side effects, and really a safe way to get pain relief that's all natural.
So, Doug, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening, and you may as well be speaking French to them, right? I mean, this is something you have to learn about. What would you say to our listeners about how they can get educated on what you do over at Farmer and Chemist, and what's the special offer you have for them?
Oh, man, that's a great question. We think about, we're so used to having long generic names in the pharmacy industry. So acronyms like CBG and CBN come natural to us, but we know that's not for everybody. So come into Farmer and Chemist at 7719 South Main Street in historic Midvale, or go online or listen to our podcast, You, Me, and CBD, and we'll teach you all about CBD and the different cannabinoids that are used. And for all of our ESPN 700 listeners, come into the store, go online, farmerandchemist.com for 20%. Just mention ESPN 700.
Doug, thank you, sir. Have a great week, okay?
Hey, thank you. Take care.
All right. Kalani Sitake joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Stadium, undefeated for Saturday night tilt against the Utah Utes. Our next guest, good friend of the show, the head coach of BYU. Great to have Kalani Sitake on a Monday. Coach Kalani, happy Monday. How you doing?
What's going on, Spence? How you doing?
I'm well, man. I appreciate the time. So when you wake up on a Monday of a week like this, how does it hit a little bit differently, just juxtaposed to your other game weeks?
Oh, I mean, I'm actually what was odd was having the bye week last week for both teams, and so that was the harder week to get through. But now that that game week is here, it's right around the corner. Makes it a little bit more normal than what we had to go through with the bye week. But I thought we took advantage of the extra time that we had, the extra preparation, and really looking forward to this game. I got to take advantage of what we got to get done today, but I'm just really excited for this game for our players.
And obviously, you're well aware of the dynamics that come into play here. And I want to go back to Big 12 Media Days when I was able to catch up with both you and A-Rod, Coach A-Rod, and you both said to me, we will be better, we will be different this year. And 8 games later, you certainly have, Kalani. What would you attribute your undefeated start to most? Is there one dynamic? Is it preparation? Because the interesting thing is, you made some transfer portal additions, but you really just grew from within, which is not the model that a lot of people are using these days. So, first of all, congrats on the start. How would you explain how this has gone down?
Well, I think we just had to believe in what we were doing, and we know that the landscape of college football has changed quite a bit. But when it all comes down to it, having the principles, the things that we actually operate by, you have to double down on it. You have a choice to either do it or abandon it, and we decided to stay the course with what we're doing. We knew what the corrections needed to be done, what things we needed to do to overcome the deficiencies from 2023, and just went to work. And I could say from January until that moment that we met with you, we saw a lot of improvement and a lot of really cool things that happened with our program and with the players, and started to feel a little bit more confident about our opportunities and the possibilities for this year. I didn't know exactly what that meant, other than we felt really confident going into this season. We're in a really good spot right now, but that doesn't change the fact that of our approach and the processes that we're trying to work through. We just happen to be 8-0 right now, but that doesn't really matter. Just like we've done it every week this season, is move on to the next one and try our best to be at our best so that we can perform and try to get that one this week. And we're completely focused on this 9th game, and just happens to be Utah. We're really excited about the opportunity, but there's a lot of things that we know we can do better, and we're seeing it. That's a tough task to do it against a tough team like Utah, and to go up to their home and do that. But we got no choice, man. We got to be able to step up. We see the challenge that's at hand, and we're hoping that this will get the best out of us.
So for me, Kalani, it was SMU. It was the road win, SMU, that kind of opened my eyes, and I went, all right, there's something going on down there. Now, I didn't know you were going to be 8-0. You never know about any of these things, but was there, as the head coach, was there one seminal moment, one seminal game where you guys were looking around, you're like, all right, this might be real? Does one thing kind of jump out?
Well, I think the thing that jumped out to me were the leaders that I saw on the team. This was in camp. I just felt a difference in the way that these guys, the closeness that they felt to each other, and then I'm seeing it the way that they're celebrating each other's accomplishments. And so when you see somebody making the play, the excitement and energy that comes from their teammates, and even people that are in competition for the same spot, that's something that's unique and different, and I'm enjoying it. And we don't have a lot of big stats that are out there, other than we have an unselfish team, and I wish I could take credit for all that, but I have to give all the credit to our players, our leaders. They've done an amazing job at owning the team and prepping them and preparing them. The peer-to-peer learning has been amazing, and it's been awesome for me to coach.
So your media every Monday after the game has been really impressive, but it's one thing to say we want to make our 8th statement, or we want to make our 9th statement, or we want to win the week. All coaches have some sort of derivative of that, but how do you make that message permeate among the young men that play for you? Because at that age, I always talk about college coaches just having a different task than pro coaches, simply because sometimes we forget how young these young men are because they're wearing pads and we watch them play the game that we love. So How have you been able to instill the week-to-week approach in your players?
Well, I think we've been really consistent as a coaching staff in our approach every week, and whether that's this year or last year, and it doesn't matter the week. We've been very consistent in how we operate. But I think the key is you can either be sad or happy, but there's one thing that has to happen. You have to go to work. And so it doesn't really matter what happened that day. You come to practice, there's work to be done. And it's really hard. If you run a certain system the way you want it to, it's hard to fake it. So you've got to be here and you got to put in the time. And for some reason, when you just put in the time and you start sweating, good things happen and people can feel accomplished. And so regardless of what's happening outside of the facility, when they enter here, I want them to be focused on what we're doing. And the best way to get them focused is you just got to work really hard. And these guys have answered the call for us to get them to work hard. And we've been able to build every week. I hope we can do the same thing this week and be consistent in what we've done so far this year.
And you've had tremendous consistency under center. And in the 4 games we saw Jake last year, there just were way too many decisions that ultimately led to turnovers, that ultimately led to losses. And it's been more, look, nobody's perfect, but he's been so much better this year, a year older, a year evolved. Obviously, your wide receiver room is, in my opinion, as deep as anyone's that I've seen. So he certainly has targets. You've got 3 or 4 capable backs you've had to shuffle through when it comes to the health stuff and a little bit of an injury issue on the O-line. Hopefully that's getting whole. But what stands out most to you about the play of your quarterback?
Well, I just really appreciate his approach to the game. So humble, and he's always willing to learn more. And part of that learning is that I think we as coaches want to focus on the negatives. It's like, hey, you got to do this better, you got to do that better. But the one thing that he's been able to do is deflect even the praise. And I think we have to do our job as coaches is to definitely give them the negative side, what they can improve on. But that's difficult to do without praising them on the things that they've done well. And when we do that, he doesn't ever take it and turns into pride. He always deflects it to his teammates. And I've been really impressed with his humility and his ability to work. And he's been through some tough times, you know what I mean? And he's had to earn this spot. And so as he won the starting spot, you can see that there's a cool dynamic in the quarterback room. And I've been really impressed with what A-Rod's been able to do with that group. And Jake's doing some good things now, but like you said, he's not playing perfect, but I like his demeanor, and I like his mentality, and I like the leadership that he's shown to our team. It's been really impressive.
You've had 17 players score a touchdown. You've had 11 players get a pick. You've had 8 players get a sack. Like, this is an absolute masterclass on depth and complementary football. You're not getting this done with 1 or 2 guys. I mean, that speaks to, I suppose, the depth you've built up to get ready for this P4 challenge, yeah?
Well, I think it's just everybody buying into their part, and you're right. It's been the stats have been kind of spread out throughout everyone in the team, and I think it's just everyone just buys into their role. It doesn't really matter if your role is a starting role. If you're a backup guy, you got to be ready. You got to be ready for that moment, just in case something does happen. And you know what happens, Spence, is you over prepare quite a bit. Imagine if you're a backup player, but you're the team that you're back, the person that you're backing up is actually healthy and doing well. Well, the last thing you want is an injury to happen, but these guys have bought in and they're focused on what's happening. They're getting mental reps and they're supporting their teammates, and that's I wish I can take credit for them, but that's the stuff that they're doing for the position groups and from their leaders, and they're following the example of their leaders. So to have guys that are upperclassmen just be happy with whatever comes their way and not be so focused on the stats. We have to all agree that the one stat matters the most, and that's trying to do whatever we can as a team to get the victory. And it's easier said than done, but I've been lucky that these young men have taken it to heart and that the leaders have taken the task of teaching it to everyone, but they do it by their example as well.
Certainly when you blab into a microphone for 4 hours every day, you're going to get a lot wrong, Kalani. I don't know that I've ever been as wrong as I've been about this Utah football team. How surprised are you as far as where we find ourselves up in Salt Lake with the Utes sitting at 4-4, having lost 4 straight?
Well, I think, first of all, they're the dangerous team because you can see the talent and you can see the toughness that's in that program. I think they've gone through some adversity. It happens in college football. And unfortunately, the injuries can be a detriment to your program and even the momentum. But I do know one thing about that coaching staff and one thing about those players. they have high character and the ability to fight back. And so we're expecting their best shot. We know we'll get their best shot because they don't know any other way. And I just need to make sure that our players and our team and our program show up with our best shot. And whatever happens. We can just live with the results. But I have a ton of respect and ton of appreciation for the way they play the game. Just really looking forward to this matchup and the energy that will be in this game. It's fun that it's back on the schedule again. But you look at the parity that's happened in this conference. You look at last weekend, for example. You can't take anything for granted. So you have to just play at your best. And even when you play at your best, it may not be good enough. But at least you can live with the results. And that's what we're looking forward to getting done. And we'll see what happens. I know that if these guys play their best, and then they can live with the results no matter how it looks on the scoreboard.
So it's been tough up here with the quarterback stuff, as you know, and Coach Witt has elected to not share who his starting quarterback will be on Saturday, so we know that Brandon Rose and Isaac Wilson will be splitting reps this week. Does that change the way you prepared for Saturday? There's this debate in college football, like, does that really give you a competitive advantage? Well, Kyle thinks it does, and it's not against the rules, so that's how he decides to go about the messaging. How does that affect your game plan as you approach this game, not knowing who's under center? Or maybe you already know. I don't know.
Well, I think I said earlier, the over-preparing is kind of what you have to do as a coaching staff. And so there's things that we have to do. We have to prepare for whoever shows up under center. And it doesn't really matter who it could be, but you can plan for anything, whether it's a wildcat situation or they use a number of quarterbacks. I mean, they're right. I think Coach Witt is right. It's to their advantage. Plus, from what you're seeing, that they're trying to get guys to earn and compete for a spot. So I'm not worried about how they do it. I'm just focused on what we can do and what we have to react to. It's been good for us to use the extra time because I know they are using the extra week for the bye to get their offense ready, and we have to do our best to get all our three phases ready. And I know that we can count on the battle. That's going to always happen in these games. Just really looking forward to the matchup and everything. And regardless of who's under center, I know that they have a lot of talent around them, physical O-line. They have great tight ends that can play, a number of them, and then a bunch of skill at wide opposition and a number of running backs that can run the rock really hard. So this is a tough task for us, and then we're taking it very seriously, and we're looking forward to hopefully the challenge making us to step up and become a better, even step up to another level of play for our side.
On the other side, Kalani, as you know, the numbers indicate this is still kind of like a top 3 defense in the conference, and that's Utah football. That's Kyle Whittingham football. It's also Kalani Sitake football, as we know. So when you study their defense, what stands out as far as how they've been able to maintain what they usually do on that side of the ball?
Well, it looks really familiar. You know what I mean? You look at the guys that are in our room and the guys that are working the defense. I know Morgan Scouty. I know Coach Whittingham. I know they'll get that team ready. And I know the coaches, Lewis Powell and Sharif. Those guys will do a great job, you know, and Swanee. I mean, those guys do a great job at getting their guys ready. So we've seen it every week, and they've been very consistent. They are a defense that is very physical, run well to the ball. That's been that way. It's almost like that's just a given. And so for us, we just have to be ready offensively. We have to be ready to take on their best. And like I said before, all 3 phases, we have to be at our best because their 3 phases at Utah are very well coached, and they have a lot of talent and a lot of skill. So as we put it all together and we match them up, we'll see what happens on Saturday. I'm looking forward to the matchup. I'm hoping that this will elevate our game and make us play even better than what we've done before. But I think we're going to have to play our best ball this weekend.
Last thing that I know you got to get to it, so I'll set you loose. But I view you as kind of what I perceive to be a leader into this generation of what feels to be a more civil relationship between the two communities. Nobody, you're not going to get perfect behavior. There are going to be a couple of idiots that do something stupid, but that shouldn't, overshadow what should be a really fun week. It's a week that I love, but Kalani, it's a week that some people don't because of the past and the energy and things that maybe have happened that have hurt feelings or what have you. So before I set you loose, just characterize how you hope this week goes leading up to the game and then during the game as well.
Well, I think this is how most fans want to be. And you have to remember that I'm a fan at heart, even though I get to be.
Did we lose him?
And I kind of was raised in the Lovell and Mac era. And then those guys were best friends. They really enjoyed each other's company. Even to this day, Patty and Mac and Vicky, they all have a great relationship. And so it's one of those things that should be celebrated. And when we were not able to play this game, we had to take an absent because of the conference issues and the realignment. Now that we're in the same conference, a power conference, I think we can take a lot of enjoyment in appreciating each other and just playing the game and leaving it at that, at the game, because this affects a lot of families and a lot of friendships, and it shouldn't be that way. I think there's a way that we can, regardless of the game, the result of the game, that we should be civil and still loving and appreciative of each other, because it's a lot better now that we have the rivalry back and that it's more consistent, and we happen to be in a power conference. So it's something to be celebrated and something to have a lot of fun with. And I hope that we can not be so toxic anymore and just enjoy each other's company, and then even by chance root for each other when we're not playing each other.
Well said. Well, I'm thrilled for your success, my friend, and it's been fun to watch. It's real. You've answered questions, and I'll wish you the best of luck coming up on Saturday, and I really appreciate your time on a busy day, okay?
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
All right, Kalani Sitake, head coach Brigham Young. They roll up here to Salt Lake as a 4-point favorite now. The line opened at 5, and it moved down to 4, and that's where it's remained, which is kind of interesting. When I saw 5, I went, oof, BYU road team, rivalry game, insane, Utah desperation. You can't fake desperation. Say it all the time. I would imagine Utah's going to come out very, very desperate, not just for a good showing, but they've got to win, man. Utah doesn't win on Saturday. I don't know that they go bowling. Of course, it's on the table. And the only thing worse than playing in a throwaway bowl game is not being eligible for one. Of course, different things at stakes for both teams. BYU still trying to stay clean. Okay, BYU still trying to stay clean. And, Kalani just referenced the chaos in the Big 12 over the weekend with Iowa State getting got, K-State getting got. Fact of the matter is, BYU can lose on Saturday, and they're still kind of high speed ahead of the Big 12 championship game. They might even be able to go 2-2 over their Final Four and still make it in. I mean, that's kind of the position they put themselves in. The only other I don't know, is Houston good? Like, we were going to do our power poll today, and my Big 12 power poll was going to be BYU 1, then everyone else, I don't know. BYU's 1, and then everyone else is tied 2-16. Like, is Houston good all of a sudden? But BYU gets them at home. They'll play Kansas at home after Utah. That road game against Arizona State's probably a little bit tricky. Arizona State's a good team. Kenny Dillingham's done a good job. But, it really does come down to, Utah fighting to save their season from a bowl eligibility standpoint, and really fighting to save their season to have, in my opinion, one more good opportunity in front of this community for something that's real and something that matters, if that makes sense, because the BYU game matters. I mean, Iowa State's good. That's going to be a fun game to go to, and it's the last home game, so honor the seniors, and we'll all be there for it. But, if Dorian Singer goes for 175 and 3 touchdowns against BYU and Utah wins, it just carries a different weight as opposed to if he does it against Iowa State, if that matters. And, yes, it does feel like we're partying like it's 1989 again, where Utah football, for a long, long time, it was like maybe we can go to a bowl and beat BYU, and that was considered success. The expectation has changed around here, and that makes this season land differently. And there's nothing that can be done between now and the end of the season to change that undeniable fact. And I'm sure Kyle would admit that himself, and he all but has in his media availability. But for one day, you have one opportunity to be great in a game that matters to a lot of people. And that's got to be the message to the players this week, who I'm sure are still down in the dumps after losing 4 straight. I mean, Utah's lost going in. They've lost games going into both bye weeks. That's got to be hard. I mean, I'm sure it just resonates and just kind of lingers and stays there. And a win on Saturday, it's not going to change what the season ultimately unfolds into. But for one moment, you can probably win back a community that right now is, I don't know. I feel like the community is very nervous for Saturday. It'll be a fun night, as Kalani just outlined, no matter what. Don't forget that kickoff time is 8:15. It is on ESPN. You can listen to it, of course, as your home of the youth for more than 70 years here on ESPN 700. Our pregame coverage with Porter Larson and
Isaac Asiata and a bunch of other folks will be stopping by.
A cast of characters stopping by our tailgate starting at 4:15 on Saturday. So come by and join us. All right, we'll do more Utah BYU coming up next with Josh Furlong. Continue the conversation into the 5 o'clock hour. We'll say goodnight at 6 in time for Monday Night Football. It's the Chiefs and the Bucks live at Arrowhead, and you can hear it all right here on ESPN 700.
maybe a soundtrack of some. But it's good. I like the bumps. I like the Quincy Jones bumps.
Documentary that his daughter Rashida directed. I think it's Netflix.
You know what? I totally spaced that is his daughter.
Yeah.
The Office.
Of The Office fame. She's very talented in her own right. You know what? It was actually HBO.
I knew that at one point and totally forgot about it.
It's really good because I'm a music fan, and I had no clue just how far his reach went. I mean, it's a pretty remarkable career, and he was a remarkable artist in his own right. Passed away at the age of 91. So, yeah, that's the musical theme of the day today. Well, the other theme of the day today is there's a football game on Saturday folks seem to be interested in. Josh Furlong from KSL, do you have any inside knowledge of this football game coming up on Saturday we should know about?
Yeah, it's a low-key game. Nobody's ever really heard of it. People will probably gloss over it, so it'll be fine.
Well, ultimately, let me start here. I like this week. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that kind of like that competitive energy. I never played for a paycheck, but I definitely played in rivalry games, and I always loved it. I don't know what, but some people very much do not enjoy it. And I don't know if it's a little PTSD from having your feelings hurt at church from a BYU bro. I don't fully know what it is, but do you enjoy this week from your vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a competitive standpoint, this becomes a very fun week every single year when it happens, right? I think there's a lot of fun to it. I understand where some people don't like it. I mean, like, there's one hand of it where I hate the BYU-Utah week simply because of the vitriol on Twitter. Granted, that comes on a day-to-day basis, but it seems to ramp up this week. But I feel like this is what you want to play for, right? I mean, obviously, Utah wants to play for championships, and they want to play for the playoffs, but you want to play to beat your rival. And now that it means something, it just feels like it has much more at stake. And I understand these two teams are at completely different trajectories right now, but I think it still means something, and I think it's exciting, right? Like, it gets people rejuvenated, even with Utah as down as they have been and not really playing as well. I think there's still a glimmer of hope because you know how crazy these games get, that, you know, maybe Utah plays spoiler, and then all of a sudden this undefeated season and this remarkable season that BYU's had is spoiled by Utah once again. So if you can't get excited for that, I don't know what to tell you, right? Like, I mean, this is the reason you play the sport. You want to be in competitive environments. You want to be able to have this fun. So I, for one, love this type of week. I think it's fun, and people should embrace it more.
So the data, sometimes it's all you can go off of. The data indicates BYU is the better team. I don't think anybody can argue that now. But if you have paid attention to the way this game usually goes, more often than not, barring like a 2004 talent gap, chaos ensues in a way that you never, ever anticipate. So ultimately, that does give Utah a fighting chance. BYU opened as a 5-point favorite. Vegas typically builds in 3 for the home field advantage. Vegas is essentially saying BYU is about a touchdown, a little bit more better than Utah. Let's start there. Do you think that's the difference? That's the general difference between these two teams, about a touchdown or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the surface, you'd look at that and you'd say that's easy money for BYU, right? Like, it seems like a real easy spread to cover. The way that BYU is playing and kind of the camaraderie and just kind of the general sense of what this team is doing, that feels like easy money. But as you mentioned, I mean, this game is just chaotic. I don't know that you can predict anything about this game. Anything that you know about it can go out the window. And, you know, what if Utah decides to play up to its potential, right? Like, what if all of a sudden things kind of happen? It becomes much more of a difficult game, in my opinion, because I think, you know, we go back to this all the time, right? Like, we talk about in the beginning of the season, it's like, oh, on paper, this team is this and that, and we project the team. There's still that same team on paper, right? Yeah, you don't have Cam Rising. You don't have a few of these other players who have been lost to injuries. But at the same time, there's still a level of talent that Utah has that doesn't mean that they're just suddenly going to roll over, right? We see this in college football every single week, where Florida last weekend was leading Georgia for some time. And it doesn't matter what season you're having, a rivalry game is going to be difficult. So, yeah, on the surface, I honestly think that this is BYU's game to win, right? I don't think anybody's expecting anything different.
but just the way that these two teams play each other, the fact that it's at Rice-Eccles Stadium, the fact that there is still talent on this Utah roster, and if people are bought in and they want to be able to use this as kind of a galvanizing moment for this team, anything's possible. So personally, I would never bet on this game because I don't think it would be too stressful for me to watch my money kind of fade away, because I know I'd probably pick the wrong way no matter what. But on the surface, this is a BYU win, but I don't know that it's going to be as clear-cut as many think, though I wouldn't be surprised if BYU could make it that way.
Yeah, and it really never is the way people think. I've learned that over the years. I rarely levy a prediction. Of course, it's part of our job, so we'll give you our predictions before we sign off air on Friday. But let's dig into some Utah stuff here for a moment. We're doing the QB thing, Josh. We're doing the QB thing. We just had Kalani on, and I asked him if, not knowing who's under center, my guess is they have a general idea. I asked him if this dynamic affects their game planning, and he said the nice Kalani thing, how they're going to have to over-prepare for both, the coach speak that you would expect. So give me the Josh Furlong gut feel about who's going to be under center, and how do you think this process is going to play out this week?
To me, it's trending towards Brandon Rose. And I think they just are trying to look for a spark and trying to get somebody that maybe has a little bit more experience under their belt, and experience being a very loose term there, knowing that he's had essentially 2 quarters of play. But to me, that's just kind of the direction that they're trying to go with. I don't know how that's going to play out, right? Because you have to be pretty dang sure that Brandon is going to be, or at least give you a better spark than what Isaac was going to do. If not, you shatter your confidence. You kind of hurt the team's morale even more because you had a quarterback of the future. What does that mean? I just think there's a lot at play here, and I understand, Utah's trying to do whatever they can to win now, and maybe that's Isaac Wilson, maybe that's Brandon Rose. Ultimately, it's up to them to decide. But this is a tricky territory, right? You've got to be able to not just go with your emotions. You've got to go through with the analytics. You've got to look at everything and see if this is the best course of action. For all we know, Brandon Rose could go out there, sling the ball for 350 yards and beat BYU by 20 points. I doubt that, but this becomes a very difficult challenge for Kyle, who already, I don't want to say he has a fractured roster, right? I don't think these guys are at each other's throats and they don't like each other. I don't believe that at all. But I think when you continually kind of mess around with that and mess around with kind of that dynamic, that can open up a challenge where you lose guys because, maybe guys think this should happen, or you lose your quarterback and you don't put confidence in. It's not an easy situation, and I get frustrated that we have to continually have this QB dilemma. The reality is Utah really didn't prepare all that much for its backup quarterback outside of Cam Rising. They put all their eggs in that basket. We didn't really get a chance to see who was behind, if Isaac really won the job, or if they just felt like they wanted to project in the future and give him that confidence. And that's a frustrating thing, because now we're stuck, 10 weeks into the season trying to figure out who Utah has as a quarterback and seeing if they can, do something with that, and not really trying to gain momentum with any other type of situation that they have.
So when you dig into the number, it still reflects a defense that is, generally speaking, maybe top 3, top 4. Some metrics are a little better. The weird thing is the metrics that aren't very good defensively are the things they're typically really good at, namely getting to the quarterback and forcing turnovers, where they're last in the conference in fumbles recovered. But overall defense are second. They're top 3, 4 in both just your nuts and bolts, your meat and potatoes of rush and pass defense, but they're not creating havoc plays, and they're not getting to the quarterback. Defensively, what are you looking for coming up on Saturday to limit a BYU offense that overall is only trailing Texas Tech in average points per game?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for this defense has just been its run defense, which sounds wild to think because this is, Utah's bread and butter. They're physical in the trenches. They stop the run. Most years they're always, top 10, top 5 in run defense. And so you've got to kind of pair that with also their tackling. They've missed something like 90 tackles this year. I mean, it's been pretty bad for a team that prides itself so much on that. So to me, regardless of what BYU does, is they've got to find a way to stop the run. Then you can play other areas of the game and try to kind of dictate it the way that you want. I think this defense is up to the challenge. I don't think that Jake Retzlaff is such a mobile quarterback that that Utah is worried that he's going to escape the pocket like, Zion Chris did against Houston or with Houston or maybe some of these other quarterbacks. But that's not to say that this BYU team can't run. I think they've shown that they've been able to have that ability. They've got a bunch of guys that can do it. And if Utah can't figure that out, it doesn't really matter what else is going on, right? Like they'll find their opportunities in the passing game. Retzlaff has shown his ability to do, what he needs to manage the game and help everything. But if Utah can't stop the run, I don't know that they have a chance, right? I just don't know that this is a situation where Utah can come out of that feeling confident if they can't get that run and get that physicality, knowing that BYU is going to absolutely try to do the same thing. They're going to try to establish that run. They're going to try to maintain that physicality and keep that momentum going. So to me, the trench play and the run defense is really kind of the tone of the game, especially on that defensive side of the ball.
So what do you so what do you think the message is? It's tough, Josh, because as you know, there's nothing that can happen over the final 4 games to change where this season will end for Utah football. Like, the only thing worse than playing in a throwaway bowl game is not being eligible for one, I guess. So, and there's a world that if they don't win Saturday, they may not get bowl eligible because they have to go to Boulder. They host Iowa State. I mean, we were going to do our Big 12 power rankings today, and I was like, all right, BYU won, then everyone else is tied in an area that I don't even know, right? Like, it's just, you don't know week in and week out. But if you're Coach Witt, if you're Morgan Scalley, Sharif, everybody up there, as you know, Josh, you pull up Utah's roster, you see California, Florida, Texas. You see a lot of kids that didn't grow up here, and therefore this rivalry was not part of their upbringing. And a lot of them probably, don't fully understand how big this game is for a lot of people in the community. But if you can be great for one day, if you can be great for one game and lead Utah to a win over BYU, you're always remembered in a different way. It's Brandon's block. We could all give you 25 different names from both sides that have stood out as legends because of one moment. So is that the tone and tenor that you set this week to help these young men understand, like, yes, it's been disappointing. We're not going to win the conference championship. We're not going to the CFP. All the things we thought we could do are not on the table. But for one day at least, you can change the way this football community feels about you as a player and us as a team with one big performance against our rival. Like, is that what's at stake for Utah on Saturday?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think regardless of where these guys come from, they understand that this game matters, right? Cam Rising was talking about this at the very beginning of the season on how much he hates BYU. And it's unfortunate that he'll never get a chance to play BYU. But I think that carries down to all these other players. They understand it. They understand that this is a big deal. But at the same time, this becomes even bigger because of what the season has been. If you can go through this terrible season where you're 4-4 and your rivals are out there, pumping their chests and doing all this stuff, and they're 8-0 coming into this game, you go beat them. What better bragging rights do you have, right? You just ruined their season. And they'll still probably get to a Big 12 championship game and probably still have a better season. But what better way to just go out with this knowing that, okay, yeah, you're preserving a potential opportunity to go to a bowl game. And, yeah, a lot of guys will probably opt out, but at least you still gave them a chance. But what better way than to just beat your rival and rub that in? Like, even on your down years, you were still able to beat your rival. Like, that just hurts. And so I think this becomes arguably the most important game on Utah's schedule this season. Coming into the season, I don't know that this would have been the case other than just your typical rivalry thing. But I think this has to be it, right? If you can't get a win over BYU, and that's a tall task on its own, but if you can't get a win over BYU, I just don't know where Utah goes after this. I think it further cements Utah's struggles. It further causes a division in kind of the fan base and the team and kind of where they're at. And so this becomes kind of an all-in type scenario. You've put all the chips on the table. You're hoping that it goes red and that you can win some money and kind of carry that on to the next round. But I don't know. I love the winner-take-all stakes kind of mentality that this can be for Utah, but they have to approach it that way, or else it's going to be BYU, and it's just going to be more proof that you weren't able to get the job done.
BYU does get to the quarterback, and they do create havoc plays. I read this stat, and it smacked me across the face. BYU has outscored their opponents 69-10 off of turnovers. Like, that's nuts. Plus 18, that's 6th in the country. 14 picks is 3rd. So this does come down to how do you attack that defense when you, whether it's Brandon or Isaac, neither have shown the ability to really dissect the secondary or go for like 350. So I'm assuming we're going to see a healthy dose of Makai. So dissect that a little bit. Run game, Utah's O-line, which has been good, but not great, and really good at times, but, sometimes left wanting a little bit. How do you think Mike Bajakian and this offense goes about attacking a defense that causes havoc every single week?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating thing that I'm curious to see, because they haven't really been able to do it much this year. And if Isaac's back there, BYU is going to load up that box and really put a ton of pressure on him. I don't know that they don't do that with Brandon Rose either. But if Utah can do things to kind of get creative, get outside of that, open up the pocket a little bit more to make it easier, I think that gives Utah a chance. If they continue to run the same things where they're inside zone, run it up the middle a million times and hope to, pray that you get something, I don't know that that's your answer. That's not to say that it can't, but you have to have more than a Mekhi Bernard. You have to mix in a Jalen Glover. You have to mix in maybe a Dijon Stanley, Mike Mitchell. You have to be creative in this front, because anything that you've done already this season is just pretty vanilla, and it's not going to be the answer. BYU has scouted it. They've got staff that knows Kyle Whittingham's, offense, defense, inside and out. And so you have to come into this game almost rewriting the playbook, letting Bajakian be a little bit more creative, or else you're going to be snuffed out really quickly. And then all of a sudden, that QB play turns into turnovers, and then all that stuff. A lot of people want to talk about, BYU has been lucky that they've gotten all these turnovers. And maybe there's some of that, but I think you breed luck for yourself, right? You get that. There was a couple of years ago, USC kind of did that. Everybody's like, there's no way that they can continue this going. And they continued to get all these turnovers, and the season kept flipping in their direction. I think when you have momentum on your side, that kind of breeds that. And so if Utah can't do anything to kind of mix it up and be a little bit more dynamic, this is going to be a real struggle. And then suddenly you're now facing these turnovers where you're either blocking a punt, or you're forcing fumbles, or you're forcing interceptions. And now BYU has all the momentum in your home stadium. You've got that crowd quiet, and you lose that game pretty quickly. So to me, you have to be pretty dynamic. You have to do something that's different that BYU hasn't seen, or else this becomes a real challenge for Utah.
How healthy, to your knowledge, is Utah football outside of Cameron Rising?
That's a tough one. Utah has lost some offensive linemen, and so that's going to be a challenge to see how they blend together. You've lost Money Parks. This becomes a difficult test on the offensive side of the ball where, especially Money, who's been able to spread the field, you don't have that guy now. You have Dorian Singer, but that's real easy for somebody like BYU to bracket him or do whatever they need to stop him. Defensively, you've got to be able to get your defensive line up, connected. You've got to have Karene Reed back on the field, and he's been there, but you've got to make sure he's healthy. If none of those pieces come together, this becomes an even bigger challenge for Utah. I think they're, trending towards a healthy unit, and that they'll be okay. But it's not as ideal as what you'd expect coming into this game, knowing how well BYU is playing, knowing how well that defense is playing, knowing that this is going to be a tall task no matter what happens.
Kalani referenced during his media that Connor Pay is most likely not playing, and it looks like Cody Epps will be out as well. But, man, that wide receiver room sure seems deep. All right, Josh. I want to be careful here because I feel like the narrative has gotten a little out of control that it's just going to be blue in the stadium on Saturday. But I will say that I've heard from more than a few people that have sold their tickets, are nervous, do not want to be there in the case of BYU rolling into Salt Lake and smacking the Utes. You've got a pulse on this fan base. How do you think it's going to look, and how do you think it's going to feel? How do you think it's going to sound? It's 8:15. It's going to be cold. It's a 4-4 team. What do you anticipate as far as Ute fans showing out on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think early on, especially as Utah lost to Houston and stuff, there was an initial reaction that I'm just going to sell my tickets. I don't really care. Let BYU, you know what I mean? But I think as kind of those games went down, you want to be there, right? You want to be a part of that action. You want to be able to make sure that you're loud and representing your team. At the end of the day, this becomes one of the biggest games on the schedule, and so you want to make sure that you represent them. I still think that it'll definitely be a pro-Utah crowd, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a ton of blue there, right? Like, those BYU fans are going to buy up every available ticket that they possibly can. I think there's a real potential here for this to be as close to a 50-50 crowd as you can get in a home stadium. I don't know that it'll be quite that, but BYU is going to show out, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to minimize what Utah does. So I'm kind of fascinated to see what it is. I still think there's a large majority of Utah fans that are going to maintain their tickets and stick with the game, but it's hard not to blame them for wanting to sell it given what's happened.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right, before I set you loose, just give me a quick thought, because lost in, the busiest time on the sporting calendar is the Utah men's basketball team gets rolling tonight, Alcorn State. And certainly for me, I've got to dig in a little bit more. I've been pretty football-centric and, jazz stuff. But just generally speaking, what is there to expect from this team? They're picked to finish last in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a team that has potential to be kind of the roster that Craig Smith wants, right? I don't know that it's going to be as good as last year, especially in a Big 12 that is going to feature several talented teams. But I think if they can kind of hit on the right things, they're definitely not the last place team. There is potential they could be, but I think they have potential. They've got some good shooting. They move the ball around well. Defensively, they seemingly always get in that mix with a Craig Smith team. I just think it's really going to come down to if they can share the ball, if they can move it around and hit their shots. I don't know yet that this is a team that will really make a lot of noise, but I don't think they're going to be as terrible as many think they are either.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate your time. Should be a fun week, so keep up the good work, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds great, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Josh Furlong covers University of Utah for our friends at KSL. You can check him out on Twitter at JFurKSL is where you find him. Some tough news. Looks like Zach Moss has an injury that's going to keep him out for a while. This is just coming down from Cincinnati. Zach Moss, looks like there's a neck issue with Zach. He's going to be sidelined indefinitely. He did not play over the weekend, so that's just coming down. Monday Night Football tonight, Chiefs and the Bucs, 6:15 start time. So stay tuned for that. Let's bring in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Cable solutions, internet solutions, wireless solutions, too, to help you save a grip of money on things that you're already using, just paying too much for. What's going on, Ryan?
Yeah, and it's a quick way to save a whole bunch of money, put stuff back in your pocket, cash especially, and upgrade. Guys, new equipment, it's always nice to have the biggest and nicest stuff out there. New phones, new receivers, and guys, we can get you all those things and lower your bill. The mobile phone stuff is phenomenal. The Boost mobile offer that we have, guys, they're piggybacking on the biggest wireless provider in the nation. Their name starts with the beginning of the alphabet. You probably figure that one out. And here's the thing is the new offer right now, we can get you a brand new iPhone 16 Pro or new Samsung, get you unlimited talk, text, be able to roam, international. You can take Mexico and Canada for no additional fee, all just like your regular provider currently, but probably $20, $30 a month cheaper, and you can get a brand new phone free. Guys, this is awesome. Brand new iPhone 16 Pro free. There you go. Call us up. Lower your bill. Upgrade. You get Dish right now. It's got that 2-year offer. It's stacked for just a couple more days. I can throw in the multi-sports pack, movie channels, and the NFL Red Zone. You get those free for a year. Plus, I'll get you Netflix free for 2 years. Guys, that's worth over $370 by itself. Save money. If you you're overpaying, pick up the phone and call us. We'll lower your bill. We can help you with internet, too. Your internet just went up? No problem. We can make it go back down. Call us, 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The Drive at 5 is next. Keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, what's going on? It is time now for the Drive at 5, powered by the Larry H. Miller in Draper. It's the Ford King, Utah's #1 volume Ford dealer, and they're going to beat any trade-in price in town by $750 anytime, any day. Find us online at lhmforddraper.com. The head coach of Brigham Young, Kalani Sitake, he's going to stop by. If you missed Coach Witt, his media availability from earlier, we brought that back around as we are often want to do on Mondays during the college football season. Of course, it is rivalry week. Say it slowly. You're talking into a mic this week. If you're on radio, if you're on TV, doing a little podcasting, you got to say it slowly. Don't get Daffy Ducked. So, of course, that's going to be the bulk of the coverage this week. Of course, other things going on as well. Monday Night Football gets going tonight to wrap up Week 9 of pro football with the Chiefs and the Bucs live at Arrowhead. But this is a big one, as it is every year. It's been 3 years since they've played, BYU breaking a 9-game losing streak last time around. BYU has not won in Salt Lake since 2006. This is the 102nd time these two teams have played, but the first time since 2018 that the game has been here at Rice-Eccles Stadium. So, doing a bunch of different things. I want to remind you, if you're a Ute fan heading to the game on Saturday, download the official mobile app of Utah Athletics. It's called Utah 360. That has all your game day information. You can download your tickets and your parking pass right on your phone. Military Appreciation Night coming up on Saturday night. And obviously, as we've discussed all day and we'll continue to discuss throughout the course of the week to get you ready for this game, a lot at stake for both teams in different ways. So the line opened up. BYU opened up as a 5-point favorite, and it pretty quickly moved down to 4. Now, I thought it would continue to move. I'll be honest. As I tell you, do not gamble on sports. You work too hard for your money. Keep it in your bank account. Keep it in your pockets. But for a rivalry game, for the road team to essentially have Vegas tell all of us they're about 8 points better than Utah because Vegas builds in 3, typically for the home stadium advantage. And all of us understanding how this game typically goes, 5 felt like a spread people would jump on, but they haven't. Moving only 1 point. That tells you that people that do this, like there are people that actually gamble essentially for a living and dig in to all of these lines to try to find out as a wise guy how you can affect the line or where your money should go. There's not a lot of action as of now on Utah BYU, essentially indicating that line is about right, according to how people think this is going to go. So as we've been talking about all day, and if you missed Coach Witt from earlier, go to our website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Utah is going to do the same quarterback thing where they're going to not announce who's going to start. It's going to be Brandon Rose, Isaac Wilson, according to what we've been told, that will receive the reps with the ones, and then we'll probably all find out when Utah runs out to take the field for their first offensive possession. Josh Furlong hopped on earlier, outlined some injuries that may, of course, hinder the University of Utah because it feels like that's just the deal, has been for quite some time along the O-line. I cannot speak to it. I don't know. For BYU side of things, Connor Pay, who's their starting center, has been out for a while. Kalani said it's unlikely he's going to play, and Cody Epps, who just, poor kid, can't stay healthy, but has not been really one of Jake's favorite targets. Looks like Cody's going to be out as well. And on BYU side, if you pay attention to landscape of the Big 12, some good news occurred for them over the weekend because essentially, over the past couple of weeks as Utah's season has gone south, ironically enough, and BYU season has done the exact opposite, I feel like the conversation around this game, BYU-Utah, has been essentially, okay, this is Utah's chance to spoil BYU's Big 12 championship chances. That's off the table. This is not an elimination game for Brigham Young by any means. In fact, there's a world that BYU goes 2-2 in their Final Four and still goes to Dallas to play for the Big 12 championship. Texas Tech, we told you, we gave you that game on Friday. Texas Tech was able to upend Iowa State in names, so they're not clean anymore. BYU is the only clean team. And is Houston good, question mark? Is anyone good, question mark, in the Big 12? Or is everyone just bad? I have no idea. But Houston got a win over K-State. And so there's a chance BYU could lose a couple of games and still make it into the Big 12 championship game. Now, as a result of the unfortunate reality of what Big 12 football has turned into, because look, honestly, I was hoping two teams would separate themselves from the pack in order to give this conference a chance to have two teams, or also to protect in the contingency, because I thought Utah would be where BYU is. I thought, as I've said for the past couple of weeks, I get a lot wrong. I don't know that I've ever been as wrong as I've been about this Utah football team. But in the case that Utah football somehow could have done what we thought that they would do and make it to Dallas to play for a Big 12 championship, should they have been undefeated or with one loss, the hope is the other team that they were playing also undefeated, one loss. So in the chance that Utah lost that game, hopefully finding a seat for them in the CFP. Obviously, that's completely off the table. But this is no longer an elimination game for BYU. I mean, of course, 12-0 would be special. Any undefeated season is so difficult. Quite frankly, any level, any sport, let alone college football. I think Saban had 2 undefeated teams that won national championships. I mean, it just doesn't happen very often. And I don't know what the CFP committee would do with an undefeated BYU team coming out of the Big 12, because it's clear that what happened over the weekend in the Big 12 forced this conference to take a bit of a hit with the public sentiment for who people think they are. And listening to a bunch of stuff this morning to get ready for the show today, most everybody's landed on that's a one-bid league. The champ gets in, and that's it. And at this point, I don't see an avenue forward. I mean, if BYU gets, let's just play this game. If BYU gets to Dallas undefeated, if they beat Utah, if they beat Kansas, if they beat Arizona State, if they beat Houston, by the way, ESPN's FPI gives them an 8% chance of doing that, and I'm sure they're just analyzing the conference and trying to dig through the minutia to find out what's real and what's not. We were going to do our Big 12 power rankings today, but as I told Porter, I'm like, what's the point? The Big 12 power rankings today sound like this. BYU is 1 and everybody else is tied for I have no clue because that's just kind of the deal. There were 8 undefeated teams when we last spoke on Friday, and as of today, there are 5, and of course, BYU's one of them. They stayed 9 in the poll. Indiana moved up because they continue to stay clean with the win over Michigan State. But if BYU goes to Dallas undefeated and Iowa State has 1 loss, and Iowa State beats BYU, does BYU have a chance to get in? I don't think so, because the rest of the schedule isn't that difficult. They've already played a pretty tough schedule, one of the toughest schedules in the Big 12. But I think that's the unfortunate reality. Even if BYU is undefeated and they play a 1-loss Iowa State team and Iowa State beats them, Iowa State goes, and I think BYU stays back. I mean, that's the problem. And look, we saw this in the Pac-12. In a way, the Big 12 is kind of proven to be, as far as narratives that are created by people that cover football in the conference, it feels very similar. Like, more often than not, we're trying to ascertain, is the Pac-12 just bad? Are these just bad teams beating up on each other? Are there 1 or 2 elite teams? I mean, Utah certainly had a very, very good team winning a couple of championships. Are there 1 or 2 elite teams, or is it just a bunch of average teams that are like beating up on each other? The Big 12 has kind of manifested itself that way, and most people thought that it would. I was just hoping most people were wrong. And certainly most people have been plenty wrong about several things that have happened this year. I mean, Oklahoma State, along with Utah and K-State, were atop most of the preseason polls, and Oklahoma State can't win a football game, no matter where they play. Mike Gundy's record in Stillwater prior to the season was insane. I mean, he never loses down there. And this year, it doesn't matter who they play, doesn't matter where they play, they cannot win a football game in conference. They lose to Utah at home. They lose to West Virginia at home. They lose to Arizona State at home. They're 0-3 at home in conference play. They did beat Arkansas earlier this year, but in conference play, they have fallen flat on their face. So, yes, several things about this conference feels like they're completely flipped upside down. It's very much bizarro Seinfeld stuff as BYU roll. Who would have thought BYU was going to be the 5-point favorite? Now the line is 4 over Utah to start the year, but that's where we find ourselves. So for BYU, it's not as clear-cut as it was prior to the chaos that happened last week. They can lose on Saturday, and they're still likely to go to Dallas. For Utah, really, it comes down to one opportunity. And, yes, I know there are other games. But Iowa State, they will be here. It will not land the way Brigham Young will when BYU rolls into town. It's a different game. Everybody that's been around it knows it. There's a different level of pressure. There's a different level of anxiety. There's a different level of energy. And there's a different reward if you find a way to be great for one day. There just is. We remember Brett Ratliff, right? We remember Brandon Burton's block. We remember those moments when a player has the ability to find it within himself to be great for one game, and that game is against BYU, and you have a big game, and you lead Utah to a win. It will change the way the community feels currently about this football team. Now, we have to be honest, nothing will change the inevitable ending of what this season is going to be. It's either a throwaway bowl or no bowl at all. As I've been saying all day, the only thing worse as a college football program with expectations like Utah football has, and they have high expectations, the only thing worse for a football program that's used to winning conference championships and playing in Rose Bowls, the only thing worse than playing in a throwaway bowl game is not being eligible for one. And there is a world where Utah football does not go bowling if they don't win on Saturday. At Boulder, home against Iowa State, on the road, short week after Thanksgiving in Orlando, UCF. Colorado's good. Iowa State, I think, is good. UCF, I'll put in a group of like 10 teams. Like, I don't know. They can get you on any night, or maybe you smoke them. The problem is the data that we have in front of us, it just can't give you any confidence as far as what we've seen from Utah football so far. It doesn't mean it won't be different on Saturday. It doesn't mean it can't be different for the Final Four games, but trying to spin it any other way than really a horrible disappointment is disingenuous. It's dishonest. I can't do that. I'd like to. The data indicates the defense is still like a top 3, maybe top 4 defense in the Big 12. I mean, most of their metrics are really solid outside of getting to the quarterback and causing turnovers. Two things that BYU has been elite at this year. In a way, and you'll hear from Kalani coming up, what Kalani Sitake has done is taken the MO of Kyle Whittingham, and he's out-Utah'd Utah. They're the ones creating turnovers. They're the ones getting the quarterback. They're the ones that are causing havoc plays. BYU has outscored opponents 69-10 off of turnovers this year. You can be very reductive with rivalry games and just talk about the turnover battle. Certainly that'll be paramount. But if you want to talk about that BYU has been 10 times better than Utah at that dynamic of playing football right now. I mean, there are very few things right now that Utah is clearly better than BYU, making this very intriguing and making this an opportunity for Utah football to show this fan base and this community one more time this year. Because, look, call it how it is. This is the biggest game left on Utah's schedule. I think the game in Boulder, which, by the way, that will start at 10 a.m. next Saturday, which is kind of nice on Fox as opposed to these late games. We have the UCF start time. That's 6 o'clock. We still don't know the Iowa State start time. But this game, 8:15, Saturday night. Pregame coverage will begin at 4:15. Porter, Big Ike Asiata will have that for you. Cast of Utah characters coming through. Check out our tailgate starting early in the day, and then tune in at 4:15. But this game, Saturday night, 8:15, it's going to be chilly. Looks like it'll be clear, which is nice. This is Utah's, in my opinion, final chance this year to show up and show out in front of this fan base that is just waiting. You can feel it at every game. You can feel that the top is about to blow every single game, but you got to give them good football to cheer for. And to me, Saturday night is an opportunity for the Utes one more time to show against that team, if you can be great one day, you're remembered in this community forever. All right, coming up on the other side, we'll bring in BYU head coach Kalani Sitake. We'll get you ready for the big game on Saturday before we say goodnight at 6 o'clock right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Maybe we should just do Quincy Jones bumps every day, man. I got to say, this has been kind of a groovy bump day.
I'm kind of with you.
As a result of his massive catalog, passing away at the age of 91, a legend. If you've not seen the documentary, it's highly recommended. Monday Night Football tonight. It will wrap up your Week 9 in the NFL. Bummer about Zach. Just came across the wire. Zach Moss, injured neck. Looks like he's going to be sidelined for a while.
Yes. Efforting more information there. Obviously, we friends of the program. Zach is a friend of the program, so we'll.
Well, when you're filling in.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's so, dude, you do that. I know that you do that. You save all your Ute homies for when you're filling in.
It's really just Zach that like genuinely hops on with me when I host. But
for a while, like I would be on vacation. All of a sudden, I get the rundown for the show. It's like Zach Moss, Eric Weddle, Britton Covey. I'm like, what's going on?
That did happen one time.
It did happen one time. That's one too many, young man. But anyway,
Zach Moss, yeah, he'll be sidelined for a while, probably a multiple week thing, and that's at a time when he's kind of fighting for starting reps at the running back position. So bummer there, but not the first time that that guy's fought through injury and made it back and become a starter again. So he'll do it again.
Did you see the video? I've got to say, good for Jason Kelsey.
Yes.
Okay? So one of the things, and this is not a hot take, okay? A lot of people believe this. One of the things that is the most bothersome element of society right now is people, as Mike Tyson has said, the problem with people now is you can say whatever you want to others on the internet without getting punched in the face. And what you have are these, and by the way, I'm sorry, I cannot stand influencers. I'm so over influencers. So what you have are these people with cell phone cameras in their hand trying to create a viral moment by outwardly insulting others, by saying horrible things about family members. And look, Jason Kelsey addressed it tonight, and I'm not one to advocate for hate or violence. But in that moment, to see that peon little influencer who was trying to create the viral moment with his phone, looking like he was about to pee down his leg when Jason Kelsey was in front of him, I got Jason Kelsey's back on that one.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Obviously, it goes beyond like just trolling people in public. We've gotten to a point now where people are like harassing people in public to get views on their YouTube. And yeah, I don't know why we're making some of the people famous that are, because they're like, I don't mean to be rude, but like little chubby kids and their dads who say boom really loud, like is a famous person because they go to Costco. I don't know what the hell is going on with society, but I think it's reflecting upon larger scale things. I'll just say that. And I would like to, yes, move on from it.
Yeah, ultimately, this is probably just the world now. And I knew as soon as they monetize social media apps, there's no going back. Like, people are legitimately paying their bills off these social media accounts, which is, okay, just go watch the documentary on the social network stuff. What do they call it? The Social Dilemma. And then when you understand the business models of the people behind the scenes, part of this was ultimately to allow people to monetize their presence on the platform so you couldn't do away with them. Like, we hear people talking about, well, we got to get rid of TikTok because of the ties with China. Good luck.
Right.
At this point, it's permeated in society where people are paying their bills on the platforms, which is part of the model, and it's not going anywhere. So there's really no going back.
Yeah, and as you said, there's an incentive for people to continue to do what they're doing. If it's getting them views, it's getting them clicks. It's getting them attention. That's the big one, I think. And, yeah, I don't like it. I don't really get it. Like, I turn on YouTube and I scroll through and see the people that are in the feed. And, Spence, I feel like I'm in a Rick and Morty alternate dimension. Yeah. Like, not a real place. But I hope I'm not the only one.
I'm sorry, it's dark in here. I can't see the sticker that's on my sweatshirt. What does that say?
You voted. Thank you.
Do I need to send this out on social
you
to make my vote official?
You got to post it online or it doesn't get tabulated.
The virtue signaling, but I am wearing my sticker. I'm going to wear it to the grocery store tonight. Should I wear it on Talkin' Jazz with Dave Fox?
Yes, because Dave will bring it up.
I'm sure he will. My guess is Dave and I don't have much to talk about in that realm of the world, and I think I'll leave that
Test
there.
it tonight on Talkin' Sports.
On TV. I will not be invited back. Hope you all are voting. If you don't vote, you can't say rip about the outcome. And so Election Day is tomorrow. That's it. Rant over. Porter, what comes our way on a Tuesday show?
On a Tuesday edition of the program, we'll do a little hoops. Tim McMahon for the NBA Daily Assist, and then we're talking college football. It's Scott Mitchell on site in person at ARUP for the Utah Blood Drive. Austin Collie, the former Cougar and NFL wide receiver, will stop by the program. Riley Jensen will stop by the program. So we're talking quarterbacks, we're talking college football, and sneaking a little hoops as well.
Good stuff. We'll be out and about on remote. Would love to see you guys at ARUP Blood Services. And with that, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you, Richard Smith, Kalani Satake, and Josh Furlong. For any of the sound you may miss from the show, website's an option, ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app, take us on the go. It is the ESPN 700 app that's available for free in the App Store or the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do in our space, specifically 4 hours every afternoon, check out our podcast page, which is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows. Hit us up with a rating or review. Give us all the stars. Say nice things. It helps out. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Utah men's basketball, Monday Night Football, busy Monday night comes your way next right here on ESPN 700.